Tigerman number 12.
Earl's 11.
Vogel, number 9.
Tontar, 8.
Clerk number 6.
Connell number 7. Ryan number 4. Zede number 5.
Junta number 3.
Tom, number 1. Shan, number 10.
I didn't hear it from him.
I was like, wait a minute, we're out of order.
I'll give it another minute.
Did I say something? Did I-
No, he's 5, he's 4, I'm 3. We're out of order. You're number 1. You're number 1.
So
You would be fine if you got one of those giant number 1 hands.
Yes, go way back.
we'll take the late file up right here, maybe?
Where?
Wow, look at that. Cynthia's leaving too.
Regular agenda,
After.
number 23.
I have a folder that
There are those people down there, isn't there?
And then we'll take it up.
Oh, I see where you are.
it's all online, isn't it?
We should pray for
Commenting on it.
What happens when you try to fit a photo in Word?
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's just a misaligned photo. It's not.
It's not what they look like.
Well, you know what? Let's hope. That was cruel.
Yeah, well, we should have. It's too late now. Okay, we'll get started. Before we begin, I would like to ask for a moment of silence to remember Stanley Jankowitz of Franklin Street, a former neighbor of mine. He and his wife Jenny were poll workers for many years. Stan passed away in the last week at the age of 89, having served as both a loyal worker at Western Electric for many years, but also I recall he and Jenny stepping out in clown costumes to go visit 6 children in hospitals throughout the Northeast Massachusetts region. Wonderful people, and I'd like to keep Stan in our thoughts tonight. Thank you. I invite you to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll ask the clerk to call the order.
Call the roll.
Roll call for tonight's meeting, 5/29/2018. Councilor Devlin is absent. Councilor Earls. Councilor Eigenman. Councilor Junta.
Present.
Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor Bryant. Councilor Shan.
Present.
Councilor Tontar.
Here.
Councilor Vogel.
Present.
Councilor Zede.
Here.
Councilor Connell.
Present. It's time for public comment. Oh, we have a late filed item. I'm sorry. We have a late filed item on your desks from the Harbor Commission. It has to do with boaters' fees. Can everybody find that?
Motion to waive the rules.
And accept the late file items?
Second.
Moved and seconded to waive the rules and enter this.
Including
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll take that up under ordinance as a late file after ordinance number 22.
A lot of people want to speak. back.
Jeez, a lot of people, huh?
Yes.
Okay. First on our list is the Honorable Byron Matthews, former mayor of the city of Massachusetts. I almost made you governor.
Almost.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening on a matter of importance to our city, and that is the plan to allow cannabis to be grown in the Lord Timothy Dexter Industrial Green. There's an old saying, it is said that there is a place for everything, but everything in its place. I'll repeat that. It is said that there is a place for everything, but everything in its place. Cannabis, or marijuana, as we know it, should not be allowed to be grown in our industrial park. This type of industry doesn't belong there. NAID worked hard and long with the city over many years to develop the industrial green. NAID also had put covenants on the property to prohibit encroachments such as the type we are speaking about. Several mayors, Henry Graff, Al Zabriskie, George Lawler, Dick Sullivan, and yours truly, all supported NAID and its goals of providing jobs in the city, which history tells us it was and is a great success. I implore you to prevent the growing of cannabis in the city. Also, let's take another look at the sale of cannabis in our city. After all, we brag about being a cultural city and a green city and a great place to live. The type of business being considered does nothing to enhance our city. I want to thank you for the opportunity to address you all. Thank you very much, and I hope you'll give strong consideration to what I said. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm having a hard time. Oh, it's Michael Sales. Excuse me, Michael. You got to improve your handwriting, Michael.
Right. Michael Sales, 6 Fruit Street. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to all of you public servants for the work that you do for the city. I'm really aware of the fact that it's long hours and you deal with a lot of important issues, and I really respect each one of you for making that effort on behalf of all of us. That said, I am going to admit to being uninformed regarding the status of marijuana issues in the city of Newburyport. It is my impression that there is a proposal moving for a referendum regarding the sale of marijuana in Newburyport for recreational purposes. I guess we just heard something about a proposal for growing marijuana in a part of our city. Now, it seems to me the referendum was conducted on this subject on November the 8th, 2016, and that 55% of Newburyport voters supported the sale of recreational marijuana in Newburyport. And I don't know why we need to have additional referenda on this topic instead of getting to work on how to manage something that has been established as the will of the people. I'm also concerned about the idea that there'd be some referenda that would occur during a special election season. November the 8th, 2016, I bet the turnout here in Newburyport was pretty high. So I bet it was a pretty strong statement about how our citizens felt. And I'm concerned about what would happen if we have some sort of a referendum occur on this issue in March 2019 or whatever that would be. And I also think that the experience of Amesbury could be relevant for our consideration here. Now, I don't remember the name of the counselor in Amesbury who pushed successfully for a referendum on the recreational sale of marijuana in Amesbury. He was quite convinced that he would be victorious, that his point of view would be victorious. And that proposition was roundly defeated. And I recall this was a multi-term counselor who said, I can't believe that I didn't know my own population. And that was a population that also, like Newburyport, voted something like 55%. So I just offer that for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sales. I might remind people, because I didn't state at the outset, that we have a 2-minute limit on comments. Please get to the point. It's important for us to hear what you have to say, but please keep it brief so that we can get on there. Many people who are asking to speak. Next up is Grace Connolly of 47 Green Street. Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Council President and councilors. I'm Grace Connolly, reside at 47 Green Street in Newburyport. I'm an attorney in town, and I also serve on the Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Action Committee. I oppose very strongly the proposed ordinance as amended that would allow cultivation in the business and industry park throughout a vast area of the park, particularly with all of the opposition and concerns that have been expressed by significant businesses that have been well established in the park for many years, and the Chamber and EDAC, which has only worked very, very hard for economic development in this city. I don't think it's in the best interest of the city. I do support the moratorium that has been sponsored by Councilor Froz-Khan. I listened to the comments, and I think her comments were very well put. We have to get this right. My only respectful request is that that moratorium be expanded to include cultivation in the park as well, because we have to get the entire ordinance right, not just the retail piece. I've reviewed the proposed ordinance. I have a number of concerns about it, which I will share with fellow councilors. There have been many reiterations of this ordinance. It's been refined. I think there is a process giving the city time through December 31st to thoroughly review the language of the ordinance that's being proposed and the impact on the city is for the benefit of the city. So I strongly urge all of you to please support the moratorium and to expand it to include cultivation in the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Jim Connolly, also of 47 Green Street.
That's right, 47 Green Street. And my comments are brief. I was one of the people, like many people, who remember when this park was created and people were enticed to come here and create their industries here. And they did that. They've contributed significantly to the tax base. In addition, most of them contribute also to the various charitable organizations in town. We're very lucky to have them. My only thought is this is most directly going to affect those people. If they want a moratorium to the end of the year to try to get an ordinance that makes more sense before we kind of cram a new zoning change over their objections, I think it just makes sense to wait and let interest. As Grace said, to try to get it right. There's no urgency to this situation. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Hazem Mahmood.
President Connell, honorable councilors, English is my second language. Yet when I read question 4, that 55% of Newburyport voters said yes to, in November 2016, it had 5 pieces of it. And it asked him, do you? And he said yes or no. Number 5 said, do you allow cities and towns to regulate the retail sales and cultivation and everything? So they said yes on it, to allow the city to have a referendum. Second, the Senate and the House, they passed Bill 3818, which said cities have the right to have a vote on sales and regulation. And the Governor Baker, he signed a law, Mass General Law, which is chapter 94G, section 3B. It says that cities have the right to vote and have a referendum. It's very simple. So voting no to Order 36 or the moratorium is violation of the law. Second, 189 cities and towns already, as of 2 months ago, according to the Attorney General office, have said no to sales and barred this retail sales. This is 55% of the numbers of cities in Massachusetts, and the number is growing. Third, we have not seen a cost analysis showing us the 3% tax revenue that everybody's drooling about. How much is the cost of law enforcement adding their salaries, their medical and retirement packages, as well the health impact in school children, which already alcohol and smoking is available. There is a lot of misinformation that is a benign drug. As a pediatric oncologist who prescribed Marinol to hundreds of kids with cancer, it's not benign. Even aspirin is not benign. So we have to look at what is the city going to benefit, the risk of doing that. So I would applaud you to vote yes to both Order 36 and a moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ed D'Souza of North Reading.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak again. And I know this is a very controversial subject. I believe mainly retail is the big concern. I know that marijuana, cannabis has been prohibited, has had a negative impact on a lot of people's minds. I grew up in the age that it was banned, everybody was getting arrested. I implore people, look at the facts, look at the benefits. Just recently, my mother, who is Alzheimer's, was prescribed Marinol. It is a big pharmaceutical drug company making THC, which is derived from a plant that is grown naturally. That's what she is on, and averts her from taking 3 other medicines. I'm involved in this, and I believe there is a cure for a lot of ailments that are occurring now, and only big pharma is controlling this. Please vote yes on the cultivation. Retail, relook at it, because the benefits to Newburyport on both sides are enormous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Peter Fitzsimmons of 7 Arlington Street.
Yes, I'd like to thank the City Council for this hearing, and also for the hearing with the Committee of the Whole and the Planning Board, where the Planning Board recommended, approved the moratorium. I think the moratorium, Ordinance 21, is absolutely necessary. In 3 days, the state will begin issuing licenses for retail marijuana. At the end of the month, beginning July 1st, retail can open. There's a lot to be done, and I think we need a lot of time to get public input on citing and the zoning. But also, this is not a simple citing and zoning issue that some people have said, just get it done. The marijuana referendum, that was 12 pages of Massachusetts code law. I'm sure all of the 6,000 or so people who voted on that read those 12 pages and really understood what they were voting on. No state has allowed retail marijuana except through a referendum. No legislature in the country has actually authorized it. It's all been done by marijuana proponents. So we had law written by the proponents, and then it had to be patched up by the state. And the state did augment those 12 pages with additional law. The Cannabis Control Commission has just issued their guidelines, 73 pages with literally hundreds of new regulations. A lot of them, the state is saying they will enforce, but you should go through all of that, because there are many things in there that you, the city, will be responsible. Law enforcement, Board of Health. Actually, the Board of Health is a very interesting one, because the state actually define marijuana as a non-edible to get the 6% tax. So local boards of health are kind of exempt. But they do allow local boards of health to issue ordinances to modify that. Anyway, that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Frank Cousins of 6 Orange Street.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's great to be here this evening. In my capacity as president of the Newburyport Chamber of Commerce, I came to speak in opposition to this proposal. We've had multiple meetings with members out in the industrial park and the business park. Taken a lot of opportunity to listen to them, listen to their concerns, and we appreciate Councilor Eigenman's work with meeting with us on multiple times, and a lot of the other councilors taking time out of their schedule to meet with different park owners and business people out there. But at the end of that, all of those individuals are still in opposition to this, very concerned about what it's going to bring to the city, how it's going to work in the city, and like to be in opposition. On a personal note, and as you all know, I was a High Sheriff of Essex County for 21 years. I have promoted healthy living, as the City Council President knows. We talked about this for over 34 years. I am very concerned about the outcome of retail sales of marijuana, how it's going to affect school children, young people, school bus drivers, CDL licenses, and I'm very concerned about those policies and how those policies have not been put in place, and very concerned about the marijuana in terms of what it could be laced with. Today I was in Suffolk County. I was involved with starting a detox center at the Suffolk County House of Correction. And I was there today with Mayor Marty Walsh, myself, also the district attorney, and Chief Justice Paula Carey of the district court. And we're very concerned about what happens to people in terms of a gateway drug and how this particular drug can be laced with other chemicals. We're hearing about fentanyl being laced with marijuana and other chemicals, so I'm very concerned about that, and I appreciate you for allowing me to speak tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Patricia Daniels, 236 Low Street.
Thank you. Patricia Daniels, Low Street, Newburyport. I have a degree from Wheaton College in urban planning with a minor in psychology. I also have courses at graduate school in psychology of addiction. 38 years working with Turning Point, Link House, Lowell House, the courts, talking with officials that say that this is a gateway drug. I believe it's a gateway drug. I also have friends, 3 friends, close friends, who had children who began with alcohol and marijuana and went on to other drugs and died. Watching that happen, listening to that happen, I implore you to do a moratorium, to get it right, and to also put it on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Constance Preston of 18 Atwood Street.
You know that street.
Good evening. I am here to implore you to vote no on the moratorium on the sale of marijuana here in Newburyport. I think it's important to say that I don't currently utilize marijuana or cannabis medically or recreationally. However, I did vote for it for both the use as well as sale in the great state of Massachusetts, as well as the great city of Newburyport. In my mind, there's no need for a second vote to understand why we would need to understand if we need to sell it in here in Newburyport. And I think it's really important to me, the ballot is the bigger question for me. To me, any sort of stall technique really ultimately is an opportunity to readdress the legalization of marijuana. And I think it's well beyond that. It's no longer about the dangers and virtues. The people of Massachusetts voted for this knowing all the data that exists today. And regardless of where you fall on that, the people of this state, and most certainly the people of Newburyport, have voted for this. And I don't see why, we've known since November, this is not a surprise for us, so I don't understand why we need more time to figure this out. I would love nothing more than a revote on the presidential election, but it doesn't work that way. We have voted for this. The people of Massachusetts have voted for this. The people of Newburyport have voted for this. We've had plenty of time to figure this out. There's no reason for us to stall on this any longer. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't read the first name, but the second name appears to be Chaput.
Hi, I'm Melissa Chabot of 316 Pembroke Street. I have more than 20 years of real estate banking experience, and I can attest to the fact that selling the cultivation in industrial parks is filling vacancy in these industrial parks, and it is creating comps which benefit all of the surrounding uses in an industrial park. I can also attest to the fact that these host agreements are benefiting the surrounding industrial park because they add to infrastructure. That's all.
Thank you. Looks like Paul Miller of Boston. Joel, okay. Joel Miller. Either I have to learn to read or you guys have to learn to write. I don't know what it is.
221 Columbus Avenue in Boston. I do have to confess, the last time I inhaled was in '72. But given that, my niece, who's 43 years old, has MS. She's taking miracle marijuana, and it's creating a quality of life for her. My wife, who's a breast cancer survivor and has had major back surgery, that she almost has a scaffolding in her back and everything, as the use of medical marijuana, and has improved both of our lives. The genie is out of the bottle, and more things that come to the front shows that there are some significant values to this. I'm not sitting here promoting recreational as much as I am the cultivation and the use of marijuana for medical purposes. I don't know enough about the recreational. Again, 72 is a few years back. But, you know, it has helped many, and I'm also an industrial real estate broker. And I specialize in food processing and refrigerated distribution buildings. And the food industry, the manufacturing, distribution, and who's doing it has changed dramatically. You have some great facilities around the New England area that are now going from food processing to the cultivation of cannabis. And it seems to be working out for everyone, taking up the real estate, creating jobs, paying taxes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why do we let him speak?
Bryce Anderson of 5 Bridge Lane. Okay, I may come back, but he better drive fast. Ralph Castagna of 69 Parker Street.
Yes, Ralph Castagna, 69 Parker Street in Newburyport. Speaking here on behalf of the Park Association, but also my own personal opinion. Councilor Connell, President Connell, thank you for allowing me to speak. Several years back, a medicinal marijuana MMOD zone was established. As we know, it was expanded. There was a proposal to expand it recently by Councilor Shand, and then more recently, once again, a second proposal to expand this once again to the entire park. I am going to ask all of you, please, 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 give this some thought. Let's put the brakes on a little bit, and let's see if a compromise can be found. I say this because I'm asking you to be a little bit empathetic, and if we couldn't get comfortable with the Shand proposal to expand the area to the east of Malcolm Hoyt Drive, to include the Don building, what could make you think we'd become comfortable with expanding it to the entire park? With that said, on some level, you've heard people talk about tonight not being comfortable with any cultivation in the park. I personally understand the value of medicinal marijuana. I think it's of tremendous value, and I think that definition of medicinal marijuana could be expanded to a lot of different areas, not just serious cancer, leukemia, things like that, maybe depression, maybe other conditions. And with that said, if there's a value to medicinal marijuana, there's got to be cultivation somewhere. But let's do this correctly. Let's show a little respect, please, to the people of the Newburyport Business Park that have been there long before I arrived and have been philanthropic to this community, paying taxes without having children in the educational system. Listen to what they have to say, okay? Because there's an opportunity here to find some compromise, but the compromise is not expanding it to the entire park and limiting it to 100,000 square feet, which could result in 4 or 5 businesses. A compromise is when both people get together and talk about the needs on both sides, and we can get there, but I need your help to do that. So I'm going to ask that you entertain the moratorium for the cultivation, or simply deny it, so that we can get together and work together and create a win-win with everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Dunn, 343 something High Street.
Well, 343 High Street. Thank you, city councilors. Cultivation has been allowed in the industrial park for several years after overwhelmingly being voted for. So it's been allowed for quite some time. The change resulting from this ordinance strikes me as a continuation of the allowance of cultivation, but now with this ordinance, it will result in 70+ jobs, tax revenue, and improvements for the industrial park, improvements for the city. You know, that said, we certainly, as being very close to a user, which will bring this to life, right? So we're talking about a company that will come in, invest millions of dollars in my building to employ people. I can speak for them when we say we are more than excited about sitting down with members of the industrial park, both new and folks that have been there for a long time, and hash out where the money is spent, improvements, where the zone is to be developed. But please, I'm asking you, don't lose the opportunity to welcome with open arms a well-financed operator who is Tier 1 and will bring a very decent, well-respected business to the city of Newburyport. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Zampel.
Good evening. I represent the NAID, previously the NAID Corporation, and now the NAID Foundation. Between the people in the park and the NAID Foundation, we've donated over $10 million since 2005 to nonprofits in the Newburyport area. If the men were here tonight, there's only one living charter member, they'd be rolling over in their graves because you're going to vote for this. These gentlemen sold bricks to buy the land in the park and then develop the park. They never accepted $1 of income. They donate it all to a foundation, and they give that money away today. So I'll go down to my death myself, fighting for them. Whatever that means to the city, whatever, we're going to do that. This is not going to happen in the industrial park. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And that concludes testimony from everyone who has signed up. No, I'm afraid that time has passed. I just have one individual who had signed up, and did he make it in? Bryce Anderson? Didn't make it. Okay. No. Sorry. Okay, public comment. I think it's time for the mayor's comment. Mayor Holliday. Oh.
Can we waive the rules for Mr. Cree? He's a resident of the city.
If that's the will of the council, if you'd like to make a proposal to waive the rules, I'll entertain it.
I would like to make a
Second.
motion to waive the rules.
Moved and seconded to allow this individual to speak out of order. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You're up.
Thank you, Councilor.
Who are you?
My name is Philip Cootie, and I'm a resident at 22 Phillips Drive, and I'm not here to talk about pot. Yes, I live on Phillip Drive, and the water issue in our neighborhood has become too difficult for any one homeowner to handle. There's been considerable drainage issues since our neighborhood was built over 50 years ago, and we are ready to see relief. This is in regards to the CIP. We have distributed to Mayor Holliday, Councilor O'Brien, Councilor Gunta, Councilor Franz, and other members of the City Council, as well as State Representative Kelcourse, our neighborhood narrative with federal documents, et cetera, about the safety hazards, personal injury, and property damage as a result of the water conditions. First, we want to thank everybody who's helped us, because there's been a lot of people here who've been involved, been to our homes, come to our neighborhood, the mayor included, the council included, the state representatives included, and to a person, everyone thinks that something should be done. And of course, the neighborhood does feel that something should be done. And we're very lucky because of this good faith in the city to have gotten a line item in the CIP. And I'm here to advocate that we support the city's attention to alleviate the drainage and flooding problems in Phillips Drive. And I'd just like to take a minute to summarize the problems so we know what kind of thing that we're asking for. We've got high groundwater issues. We have surface flooding, road deterioration. We've got ice dams in the winter and people stuck in their homes. And this has gone on for years and years and years, and Mayor Holliday has, with her team, has put together a proposal that will help to alleviate this condition in our neighborhood that's gone on far too long. There's been individuals fighting for years, and it's time that we did something. And so the line item that's in the budget would help with cleaning outlet pipes, fixing the water on the hill that creates the ice dam. It will help to install a sub-drain on that hill, and then also it would fund a detailed topographical survey and a drain line. Now, all of these things are going to have material and material effect on our quality of living, and we're very thankful that the city has taken this up, but we're not there yet. There's still a lot of work to do. And this line item is the first thing, and I'm here to ask all of you for our support, because for your support, because this is just the first steps that we need to make, and there's going to be a long road ahead of us. We're going to be asking for more money. It's going to be difficult to get. There could be grants. There could be looking to the state for funding. There's a lot of work, and we're happy to help you with that. So thank you first, and please help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cootie. Now, to the mayor's comments.
Because I have a lot of moms who demand action outside, I would like to do the proclamation first and then my update, if that would be okay with the council.
I have no objection. I was going to put it after your comments, but you can start with it if you'd like.
And could you bring... Thank you all for joining me tonight on this proclamation. Whereas every day, 96 Americans are killed by gun violence, and on average, there are nearly 13,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to be killed with guns than people in other developed countries. And whereas the Office of the Mayor and the Police Department consider the protection of public safety their highest responsibility. And whereas in January 2013, Hadiya Pendleton, a teenager who marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade, was tragically shot and killed just weeks later, should now be celebrating her 21st birthday. And whereas, in honor of Hadiya and the 96 Americans killed and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated June 1st as the 4th National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And whereas this idea was inspired by a group of Hadiya's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. This color was chosen because hunters wear orange to announce themselves and to other hunters, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. Now therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Donna D. Holliday, Mayor, hereby declare June 4th, 2018 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the city of Newburyport. Be it further proclaimed that the city of Newburyport honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence, and to declare that we, as a country, resolve to work towards a resolution and reducing this violence. Given under my hand and sealed this day, Donna D. Holliday.
Thank you, Mayor.
So wear orange on June 1st. I like the fact that you put the ribbons on, most of you did. I know you have a heavy agenda. I'll run through my update really quick. Budget workshops are going well. Thank you so much. You have the FY18 capital plan before you, and anticipate that being approved this evening. Please remember that the $65,000, no?
Holding in committee. Because we wanted to use the workshops to ask department heads about the capital proposals. So, next time.
I need the money for the roads to be able to sign the contract next week. Okay, moving on. We'll be working on the capital plan and looking forward to your review and approval of it. Just recall that the $65,000 for the Mason work at the high school has been pulled. Water and sewer and capital plan is in your packet tonight. That was not included in the original capital plan because it has to be vetted by the Water and Sewer Commission first, and then it's in there. This is a standard protocol where the money that is in retained earnings, which again, like free cash, will freeze mid-July until October. That's why the money needs to be transferred so that it can be allocated for the water and sewer capital projects, as well as you'll notice that it's holding down the water and sewer rates this year. Plumber Springs Bridge, I think everyone knows that we had a further collapse of the bridge and it had to be closed to vehicular traffic. In a conversation last week I had with the Lieutenant Governor, she said that we will be getting the $500,000 grant for small bridge repair, so that certainly will not take care of this entire bridge, but will go a long way in terms of further assessment and some shoring up. We should have our mitigation from Walsh McCore. We've been working on it for quite some time in the next couple weeks. The three things that we're really pushing for are paving a large portion of Ferry Road, elevation paving and drainage work on Spring Lane, and a sidewalk on Spofford Street. We have a Whittier Bridge Working Group with Amesbury and Salisbury coming up June 15th, and the project completion now is the end of August. Please note that our $1.2 million Safe Routes to School grants, a public hearing is scheduled for June 14th at 6:30 at the public library. This is the area to be designated in Safe Routes to School is from Toppins to Johnson Street. We've been getting some complaints about the road work that has started on 113. They're working on ramps, drainage, and then paving. We tried to do daytime paving there, if you recall, during the Tropic Star. Kids weren't getting to school for 45 minutes late. It was not working. So I'm just asking residents to be patient for a couple weeks while they complete this important work on Route 113. Intermodal facility garage, we're actively working on the brick mock-up. We might even have to go into Vermont to take a look at the full mock-up because it just can't be delivered here, I guess. And that's really important for us in terms of finalizing the mock-up and the brick colors so that we were able to order the precast. I've been in touch with Lieutenant Governor, and Andy Port has been in touch with Mass DOT, and we have been assured that there is no issue with the $2.5 million that was supposed to be spent by June 30th. They will be able to be a little flexible with that timeline. We're working with the RTA on the MOU lease agreement with a meeting on June 5th. We had I think a very, very good meeting with the NRA Waterfront Trust in the city on the 25th. The first portion of the meeting was devoted to what's happening with the environmental cleanup. I think that there's a really good plan and timelines now that is available regarding the environmental issues with the NRA looking at the AUL on the west side and then also reevaluating the parameters of the AUL on the east lot. The Waterfront Trust will begin the Phase 1 EPA assessment. We certainly have concerns about what those findings are. The TRC report that came out in February identified that it could cost up to $500,000 to clean this property, and with this additional study, it could raise even additional costs. So that's something we're going to have to tackle. The NRA has a new attorney, Kathleen O'Donnell, who's very experienced in land use and also redevelopment authorities. We talked about, now that we have this timeline that will take us into probably another 6 months, that I was in violation of state law by putting in short-term appointments for the NRA, trying to work with you on a compromise position. Those positions have to be 5 years, so I will be going back, speaking with their attorney and submitting corrected appointments for David St. Cyr and Bob Ulig on your next meeting, and please call me if you want to talk about that further. I wanted to recognize Councillor Zeid for all of his work that he did on Mobile Light. You have an ordinance that you'll be reviewing tonight that is a model from another municipality. Our chief organized our annual tabletop, if you will, our exercise where we bring all public safety, the ambulance, hospital together, and we have a scenario and prepare for the festivals in terms of any type of emergency situation that should emerge. 2 personnel issues I wanted to mention. Tracy Maynard, our human resource director, is relocating to Cape Cod, and her last day, unfortunately, is June 30th. And Cynthia Dodd, our head librarian, is retiring in August. So those positions are posted and will actively be doing interviews in that area. Congratulations to David Hall and his team for the groundbreaking ceremony on May 18th. Also wanted to just again recognize Vicki Hendrickson, Skip and Marge Motes, and Ann Orman, who received Distinguished Citizen Award at the Mayor's Scouting Breakfast, and also Sam Spinney did a great job talking about what it's like to be an Eagle Scout. The Youth Services and Community Awareness did their asset program, a community conversation about the results of the survey with the community, which was very successful. And the Human Rights Commission held their second annual iftar to raise awareness about regarding Muslims and Islamic faith, and I would like to recognize Councillor Khan and her husband Amir Ibrahim, who is also a Human Rights Commissioner, who was instrumental in organizing this iftar for the community. And finally, would like to give a shout out to Kevin Hunt, our Veteran Service Officer, for organizing a really nice Memorial Day yesterday. And thank you to the counselors who appeared, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, our high school band, and to our police and Coast Guard Honor Guard for participating. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Junta.
Just a quick note. I, like you, have been getting complaints about the road work on 113, because I was telling people this is a really good thing, that the state is doing all this work. But one of their comments is we're not getting any notifications from the state. Like on the Whittier Bridge project, they send out emails, let people know when it's going to be arranged or whatever, so the neighbors aren't sure exactly what's going to happen when.
We've posted on the website because we have received notices from them, and did bring it up in my update. It's been in the paper. I spoke to Dan Fielding, who is their legislative community liaison. He's been working with us on the Whittier Bridge project, and asked him if he could report back to Mass DOT in terms of some of the complaints. I sent him a sampling of some of the emails, and if he could reach out to some of the abutters and just have conversations with them about the project. So yes, and so keep in touch with me, and we'll try to, resolve these as quickly as possible. But it's, there's not a lot you can do at this point. And a lot of the other advisors to the Whittier project dealt with it for 4 years, not.
Have you given
Other
any
questions?
Have you given any
Councilor
thought?
Vogel.
Thank you. Have you given any thought to the announcements that we get via email or on our phones?
People have to sign up for those.
Well, I mean, do they know that? That's all.
It's on the website how to sign up. So I think the difference with the Whittier Bridge project is we've been meeting with the residents for public meetings, and they signed up, and then their names were put into a listserv.
Yeah.
And that is different than what we've done, because it's a short-term project.
See, I've been getting those emails, and then I've been pushing them out to
Okay.
the residents, doing live blog on Facebook. So
Do you have the posting that's on the website?
I don't know.
Okay, Paul, can you send that to Counselor tomorrow, and we can take care of that?
Thank you.
Okay.
Other councilors? Councilor O'Brien.
Yeah, I would just like to thank the mayor for the work she did, the mitigation on the Whittier Bridge for Ward 6. They for many years have seen those big trucks go by Ferry Road and Spofford Street, and now to get a sidewalk out of this and to repair the road, I want to thank you for your hard work. I know you worked many years doing this, and the residents appreciate it, and I do too, so thank you.
Other questions from other councilors?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor's proclamation is done, so we can, maybe we should take this right now. Do we want to act on the mayor's update?
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, councilors. And we'll move on to the consent agenda.
That consists this evening of the approval of the minutes for May 14th. There are 3 transfers. Transfer 12 is water retained earnings and sewer retained earnings to multiple accounts in the amount of $1,622,000. Transfer 13 is the Harbor Master retained earnings, $4,400 to Harbor Master debt service, same amount. And transfer 14, youth services revolving fund, $15,000 to youth services Brown School expense, same amount. All 3 to be referred to budget and finance. There are 3 communications, all to be referred to public safety. Communication 45 is a block party on Ting Street, June 22nd. Communication 46 is a block party on Chestnut Street, June 23rd. And communication 47 is the Jeannie Geiger 27th Walk Against Violence, October 7th, 2018. There are 3 reappointments. Appointment number 40, Christopher J. Leclerc, Fire Chief, till 6/1/2023. Appointment 41, Thomas F. O'Brien, 11 Mosley Avenue, Housing Authority, 8/1/2023. Appointment 42, Amir Ibrahim, 85 Prospect Street, Human Rights Commission, until 6/1/2021. There are 2 appointments to refer to committees. First one to go to Planning and Development. Appointment 43, Rishi Surjit Nandi, 14 Spring Street, Planning Board, until 8/31/2021. And appointment 44, Roger E. Jones, to be referred to Public Utilities. He lives at 37 Storybrook Drive. Will sit on the Water Sewer Commission until 5/1/2023. And that is the consent agenda this evening.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded moved by Councilor Zede, seconded by Councilor Khan. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Present.
Councilor O'Brien, thank you. 1 abstention, 1 present. That's the end of the consent agenda. We'll move into the regular agenda. We've already acted on the mayor's update, so let's move to appointments, please.
We have 1 appointment, Ronald M. Thurlow, 28A Hancock Street, to the Harbor Commission until 6/1/2020.
Motion to approve on second reading. Second.
Moved and seconded. This will require a roll call vote. Is there any discussion first? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call, please.
Appointment of Ronald M. Thurlow, One absent, Councilor Devlin, Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes. That's all that we have in second reading for appointments. Let's move to orders.
I'd like to make a motion to take Order 38 and 40 collectively.
Second.
38 and 40 collectively. There is a nexus.
Mellow collection contract and the
Yep.
Wheeler
and
Breda.
the Wheeler Breda Bride contract.
And was that seconded, Councilor O'Brien? Did you
Yes.
second that? Thank you. Discussion.
No discussion. We haven't motioned to
Oh, it's a motion to
Motion to take Order 38 and 40 collectively.
collective, so we have to vote on it, right?
discussion about collectively.
Send them somewhere, presumably.
Sending them where?
We have to vote on the
Well, I just want to, yeah.
Just want to take it collectively. Thank you.
Brainberg. All those in favor of taking these matters up collectively, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Is there a motion?
Motion to refer collectively to Budget and Finance.
Move to the Budget and Finance. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. So they are moved to Budget and Finance. Anything else on orders?
39?
39. Would be nice.
So what's the number of months?
Waiver up.
Number 39, a resolution.
You want to read it, or you want me to?
I do.
Okay.
I want to find it, actually.
Do you like, all right, here's the second page. The president should read it while he's looking, come on now.
Give him the first one.
I used to bail him out.
Appreciate your assistance for writing a lot. It's a resolution congratulating all Newburyport students. Would you like the whole thing read? Just because I think it's going to be referred.
Right.
It's going to be tabled, is it not?
Yes.
So this resolution, just for those that would like to know at this point, is a resolution on the recognition of the salutatorian and valedictorian for the Newburyport High graduating class.
Motion to table.
Second.
Motion is to table. Is there discussion?
No discussion on that. No discussion on table, yeah.
Right, thank you, Counselor.
My pleasure.
No discussion allowed. All those in favor of tabling these items say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. They
Thank
are
you.
tabled. Kids couldn't make it here tonight. Ordinances.
Ordinances, we have the second reading of ordinance number 11, which is a zoning map change for Low Street Farms.
What is the will of the council?
Motion to approve on second reading is amended last week. Second.
Motion to approve as amended. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll take a roll call.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tonto.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Ordinance 22.
Congratulations.
I'm sorry, who was the second on that?
Councilor Junta.
Thank you.
Small cells.
Small cell sites. I think this is mobility, huh?
This would be ordinance number 22, submitted by Councilor Zede. It amends utility poles, section 5-206, goes on for a number of pages, and I'm sure the council would like to.
Motion to refer to public utilities.
Second.
Moved and seconded to public utilities. Discussion. Councilor Zede.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, the mayor thanked me, so I want to extend the thanks to Councilor Khan, Councilor Shan, and Councilor Tontar, all who have been along for this wonderful ride, having researched and found different information, including Councilor Khan, who found the resolution or the model ordinance from another community on which this is based. Everybody knows we've been at this one for a little while, and it has taken a lot of winding turns. But this ordinance really comes out of discussion with the city solicitor, and we'll talk more about that in committee, but I wanted you to know why it's coming in and kind of where we are with this one, since it's been a little bit thorny. So we'll get to it in committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of this referral, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. It's in public utilities. Thank you. We also have a late file.
Ordinance number 23, which is a waterway fee ordinance, changing waterway permits at $4 per foot and mooring permits at $3 per foot. Boats under 17 feet, flat rate of $20. Boats 20 feet or greater will be charged a clean water surcharge of $10. Jointly submitted, Councilor Devlin, who's not here, and Councilor Earls.
Motion to refer to license and permit.
License and permits. And is seconded by Councilor Genta?
Genta.
Thank you, Councilor Earls. Discussion. Councilor Zede.
I just have a quick question. Is it a new fee? Is it a new fee that doesn't exist, or is it an update of an existing fee?
Update of existing.
Okay. So the 4-73 has what the fees are today? Okay, thank you.
Further discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of referring this matter to license and permits, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's in license and permits. We're ready for committee items. Budget and Finance.
Motion to remove Communication 22, the Capital Improvement Program.
Second.
Moved and seconded to remove Communication 22 from committee. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is that?
Motion to amend. I have a copy of it. We're moving to amend the estimated project cost
Can
by...
we look at it on, is there a second to this motion to amend?
Came out of committee, so I should have taken it
Second.
out. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor.
On page 83 of the document, there's a Phillips Drive road work and drainage. And what it reads currently is fiscal year 18, 0, fiscal year 19, I think was 250,000, fiscal year 20, 2.5 million, fiscal year 21, 2.5 million. What we did is we, in committee, we put fiscal year $75,000 in fiscal year 18. That corresponds to the mayor's capital transfer that we have in committee. For fiscal year 19, we changed it to $2,775,000. That's the difference between 75,000 and 250 and the 2.5 million. And then fiscal year 20, $2.5 million. In committee, we did this amendment in response to the community, to the Phillips Drive, to see if we could move this up. We may not. Some of it may depend upon how long it takes to do the design, but we wanted to express our opinion on it. Other than that, the capital improvement program is the same as came before us.
Thank you, Councilor. Further comment?
This is on the motion to amend specifically, Mr. President?
Motion to amend.
Yeah, I guess I should.
Came out amended.
Right.
Okay.
It did, but
Okay.
it didn't get in the packet as amended, so.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Eigenman.
Forgive me, so we're voting on the CIP for the next 5 years now? Is that what's on the
Yes.
No,
Yes.
first, no, we're voting.
Well, no, we're voting on an amendment right
We're
now.
voting on an amendment.
But what's before us is the CIP.
Okay, so contrary to what we told the mayor it is, we are voting on it tonight.
No,
No,
they're two different things.
let me,
Councilor Tantar.
there is what's called the capital plan for fiscal year 18.
Yeah.
That is remaining in committee.
All right.
This is the capital improvement program, all right, which is distinct from the particular year's spending.
Yep.
So this is the 5-year program, all right, which identifies capital projects over 5 years and prioritizes them. The capital plan that's in committee, holding committee, is the spending appropriation for fiscal year 18.
Okay, but
Councilor Eigenman.
But the capital improvement program does include line items that's in the appropriation order, does it not?
It does. Whoops.
Okay. All right, it does.
It does, although there are some added lines and some lines changed. And that's been the case every year.
Further discussion?
Just on the amendment,
This
right?
is just on the amendment.
On the amendment.
Point of order, we're just voting on the amendment.
Amendment, right.
Just on the amendment.
Thank you, sir.
Does everyone understand what we're voting on?
Just for my edification, maybe. This is a motion to amend only on page 83
Yes.
of the CIP.
Yes.
And you're changing the table as you presented to me and recited, FY 18 through 22, and the total 5-year cost.
Yes.
Those numbers that I have. If you'd like me to repeat the numbers, I will.
It is the phasing. Good call. All those in favor of this amendment, say aye.
Aye. Hallelujah.
Opposed? Thank you. Anything else?
Motion to adopt as amended.
Second.
It is moved and to adopt as amended.
To amend.
Actually, the motion is to adopt as amended. And if you have a further amendment, you can propose it if we open discussion on this.
Maybe.
So motion to amend.
One moment, please, Counselor. It is the motion to amend and discuss it. Okay, Counselor Eigenman, you're right. You're in order. Go ahead.
Mr. President, I think we need a second on the motion.
We
to
did. It
approve.
was Counselor Vogel.
Take the pick, both sides here.
Counselor Eigenman, go ahead.
Yes, motion to amend the item on page 17, Type 3 ambulance for fiscal year 19, beginning July 1st, 2018.
Page number again, please?
Page 17. Motion to
17?
amend by postponing 1 fiscal year.
And what was that again, please?
Ambulance,
Yeah, how much? What year?
$200,000 instead of July 1, postponing it to next year's July 1.
Is there a second to his amendment?
Second for discussion.
Second. Discussion. Counselor Eigenman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, so I did attend the hearing, and there's no profit loss statement or pro forma of any kind that's been provided that I know of for ambulance service, and yet we're leaping ahead to purchase for $200,000 an ambulance. We don't know how we're going to staff it. We don't know about benefits for the new staff. We don't know operating costs, which are listed at $2,500 with no substantiation. It's very possible that this is a great idea. We just don't have the information. July 1 is a mere 40 days away even. So I would ask that we put this off a year before we leap into the breach. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Does Mr. O'Brien care to respond, or does the administration care to respond? Okay. What is the council, we have an amendment to extend forward to a future date the appropriation for the ambulance service. Is that correct?
For clarity purposes, I think it's a motion to change on page 17. Proposed ambulance $200,000 expenditure 1 year to FY 20.
Right. Is that correct? Okay. All those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The chair's in doubt.
No roll call.
We'll take a roll call.
Councilor Earls?
No.
Councilor Eigenman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
No.
Councilor O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
No.
Councilor Tontar?
No.
Councilor Vogel?
I'm going to vote yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Zede?
Present.
Council President?
No.
Motion fails.
Motion to amend on page 40. The item is Field Improvement Fuller Complex. Line item for fiscal year 2019, $200,000 from CPA grant and trust funds. Postpone 1 year to fiscal year 2020.
Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
For discussion. All those, excuse me. Discussion. Councilor Eigenman.
This is a project that I supported. I've met with the Friends of Newburyport Tracks. I'm sure all 11 of us have over the years. We did allocate money for an early allocation for this project. In the current fiscal year, we'll be spending another $43,227. It's a worthy project, but we have a lot of worthy projects, and I do think there are other uses for CPA funds, and earmarking $200,000 to put in stands. Someday it would be great to have stands, but I don't think it's a high priority for this council to pre-commit itself to a CPA grant when we haven't gotten any of the materials on that, and we have many other uses for that $200,000. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Present.
Fails.
1P.
Motion to amend on page 49, having to do with the Brown School, relocation of Newburyport Youth Services. The line item is fiscal year 2019, $2 million from other. Motion to amend to $3 million.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Ackerman.
When the public hearing was held on the capital improvement program by Budget and Finance, I attended. There was testimony from, I believe, 3 members of the public advising that $2 million seemed exceedingly low if we are truly to acquire and fit out space for Newburyport Youth Services. So therefore, as a planning document, $2 million is an unrealistic number. From our own work at Planning and Development and our committee, we've taken information that also appears to be a low number by at least $1 million. To give you a frame of reference, we do know that the racket club sold recently, so we have a comp for what that would cost. I believe it was $2.6 million, and that of course wouldn't include any improvements. So I would ask him, I support youth services to the hilt, but it really is not realistic to only set it at $2 million. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councilor Tantar.
In the charter, when we increase spending in the capital improvement program, we have to stipulate the source of the spending. So the current source, what I understand, is the sale of the Brown School. So you're going to say we're going to sell it for more? Or another free cash? We can do.
Actually, it says other funding source includes proceeds from the sale of the former Brown School and Kelly School. So if it's okay to put other for $2 million, it's certainly okay to put it for $3 million. Thank you.
Further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of this amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Present.
No.
1 no, 1 present.
No. I just didn't say it.
2 noes.
Count 2 and 1 present. 7, 2 and 1. Additional amendments.
No. Thank you.
Other matters before Budget and Finance.
You have to vote on
We
this.
Must be the heat.
Something I must vote on it.
So is there a motion to adopt on the floor now?
There's a motion to approve as amended on
As
the floor by
amended.
Councilor Tantar.
And the amendment includes the amendment that just passed in the previous one.
No comments.
So could the clerk summarize the amendments that are successful, that are a
Okay.
matter of discussion,
So
a matter of consideration
we
on
had
this
one
vote?
successful. The first one failed, second one failed. The third one, which was the Brown School relocation, $2 million to $3 million, page 49, that passed resoundingly. The other amendment was first introduced by Councilor Tantar, which was initially commented on. It was the table with various amounts on it. Let me recite them. FY 2018, $75,000. 19, $2,775,000. 2020, $2,500,000. FY 21 and 22 have no changes or no money. 00. For a total 5-year cost of $5,350,000. Those are alters the table of estimated project cost by fiscal year that's on page 83.
Okay. Councilor Zede.
So this came out of committee 2-1, and I was the one, and I want to explain my vote, and I also want to explain my present vote. So if you're at home and you're watching this on camera, you may be under the impression that we're talking about real money. You would be wrong. This isn't real money. It's a plan. Last year I voted present because I'm a strong believer in the power of planning. However, it has been one of my kind of crusades, if you will, that we get to put some money behind the CIP. We have residents from Phillips Drive that are counting on us to execute this plan, when in fact, we just added $1 million to the Brown School. Okay, we moved up a year, which by the way, the City Council does not initiate expenses, something we are reminded of frequently. I believe strongly that the best way to do capital planning is for us to have a capital fund whereby a portion of it is committable to future years. We can commit it and be ready to do a project so that when we tell a resident something's going to happen, it happens. And that we have a portion of that fund that's left over for reaction. Unfortunately, we live in an old city, things break, nobody denies that. Right now, our primary capital strategy is to rely heavily on free cash, which sounds like a great thing. Free cash, that sounds awesome. Well, free cash is actually what you end up with at the end of the budget year when you underspend some lines or your growth comes in better than expected. The problem with relying on that is not 100% long-term consistent. So what could happen is, in a bad economy, new growth may not pace as well as you would like it to, or as we expect when we do the budget, and we'll do it in a few weeks, we expect departments to spend the money we give them. So if they underspend it, we're actually lucky. This is a big issue for me, something I believe strongly in, something I proposed a resolution on trying to fix. But it's deeply frustrating to me to argue about an ambulance and the Brown School and other things, with little information, which actually is understandable. Some of these expenses are 5 years out. So I value the planning process, but if we're talking 2 years out, 3 years out, we should be able to anticipate those expenses and we should be able to plan for them. I will also tell folks that are watching that in my experience, and this is my third round of this, there have been plenty of instances where things that weren't on the capital plan at all of a sudden are in there and other things get squished down to the bottom. For example, we have a bond before us now, which we'll be hearing soon, for roofs. Well, I believe 2 out of the 3 roofs weren't in the CIP in any of the previous years. And we have these great budget hearings and we learn that the firefighters, their scuba units, the SCBAs they use to breathe, they're all gonna be kaput in a couple years, and that's a $250,000, $300,000 problem. So things are missing from it. Things move up all of a sudden, things appear out of nowhere. So I wanted to express why. I should have voted present on the Phillips Drive. I apologize in my haste to be consistent. I want to be fair and say that I don't think it's worth reconsidering the vote since it will not change anything. But those are my frustrations, and I think this is something we could all work together and really come up with something. A couple years ago when we did the resolution asking for this idea, we asked for $10,000. A pittance, and the argument was, well, you might not spend the 10 grand. Show me a year in Newburyport we don't have $10,000 of capital needs, and I have a bridge to sell you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hofford. Councilor Eigenman.
Well, if I may, I'm the only one that put forth amendments, so I guess I'll have to explain that. To the extent that Ward 1 Councilor is frustrated that we don't have a capital line item, I'm not speaking to that at all. So I have no, I'm not taking any position on that. That's not before us. But the capital improvement program is not something that we made up. The public has to know it's in the charter. So essentially they voted on it. The people of Newburyport adopted the charter by referendum. And it has very detailed, it's one of the longer sections actually having to do with finance in the charter. And it says shall, it's not optional. It's something we have to do. It's a planning document. There's supposed to be supporting information to it. It's supposed to tell you the cost estimates, the methods of financing. It's supposed to give the estimated annual cost of operating and maintaining each facility or major piece of equipment that's on the plan. It has to be, the public hearing has to be advertised in the local paper, especially, which is not something we do all the time. It's something that has to be posted on the website before the hearing. After it's amended, it has to be posted again when it's corrected. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's an important planning document. It's not for us to decide whether we think it's important or not because it's in the charter. And I don't think the amendments I made had anything to do with expenditures 5 years out. Every single one of them had to do with expenditures 32 days out. 32 days. So I think it was absolutely in order to take the program seriously. And you know, I'm going to say right now, I don't understand at all why we would approve a capital plan for $200,000 of new ambulance when we don't know anything about ambulance service. I don't understand why you do that. But you know, that's fine. So I just want to explain the method of my madness is it's in the charter. We're doing what we're supposed to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion. Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, just really quickly, you know, I spoke to a member of the Charter Commission, and actually it was the member who was the prime advocate of putting this in the charter, and I asked him specifically, did you intend by this, was it discussion, all right, to have, you know, committed funds to be able to do it? Was it your intent that this be followed? In other words, if it says in 2022, we're going to do this project for this amount of money. Was it your intent that the city have to follow that? And he said, no, the intent, all right, was to get the mayor and the city council, all right, to focus on 5-year planning with the understanding that it would change, all right, with the understanding because reality changes. But we felt it was important that the mayor and the council, the administration and the council, show to the public what we're facing, all right, as what we know we need at that moment. But he said, we understood, and in discussion in the Charter Commission, the whole commission understood that, you know, would have to change, right? The idea, and you know, a lot of other communities do this as well, so. I mean,
Let the record note that Councilor Devlin has joined us. Good to see you. Further discussion. Councilor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm also on the Budget and Finance Committee, and I've been seeing this whole process with the Capital Improvement Program. And I have to tell you, I mean, I understand, and I hear the councilor from Ward 1 and his concerns, and I understand it's not really seen as real money. Are all these things going to happen? But I have to tell you, the planning that went into looking at the next 5 years, the expenditures, and what's going to be kind of in the foresight of what's happening up ahead was really not only beneficial, I think, for city councilors, but I have to say the public as well. So when we did the public hearing, it was great. We had almost like 20 people from Phillips Drive. We had some people from Youth Services. It was an opportunity to kind of lay out here are some things that we know needs to be done. So for me, I am in favor of this, and I spent quite a bit of time looking at every line item and putting some thought behind it. So I hope we continue to support what we have in front of us. And then maybe, I know I have heard that the charter needs to be reviewed, and the timing of it not falling in line with the budget is a little frustrating, and that part I can understand maybe needing to be improved. Thank you.
That's a good point.
Further discussion. Councilor Zede.
I just want to respond to a couple comments. Somehow this took a turn into somehow implying that the charter is not appropriate. I think they hit the nail on the head with the charter. The idea is to do capital planning. Our job is to approve a capital plan that makes sense. So with all due respect to my at-large colleague, Ward 4 and Ward 2, what we're saying is it might happen and it might not. So if you have a shop vac in your basement and you're emptying it of water every 24 hours, then maybe you wouldn't like to hear that. And that's what frustrates me is when a resident calls me and said, I thought my road was going to be paved 9 years ago. I was on some list and the list doesn't exist. Or if it's Phillips Drive, I thought we were going to get our drainage problem resolved. It's in the CIP and it doesn't happen. It's not appropriate in my opinion. We could, if we so chose, this is the purview of the council. My comments are absolutely, I don't question anybody's validity in placing amendments. I think it's perfectly fine. But we could bend this into a document that has some reality into it, at least for the next 2 fiscal years. I mean, things are going to break in Newburyport. Ladder trucks are going to fail, and roofs are going to fail. It happens. So I don't want anybody to misconstrue my comments to be in opposition to the charter or think that this is an ill thought out or not well thought out charter provision. It's a great one, just not the way that we're doing it, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor. Additional comment? Questions or comments from the councillors? Hearing none. All those in favor of passing the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
1 no. Thank you, councilors.
Mr. President, may I make a point of order question?
Point of personal privilege?
Yes, please. I would like to ask if the Chair of Budget Finance would consider taking Ordinance 13 first.
I was going to do that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Anything else, councilor?
Motion to remove Ordinance 13, the establishment of departmental revolving funds as amended in committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of taking this item out of, well, you take it in order right now. All those in favor of taking this out of committee, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. Councilor?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilor Khan.
So first, I want to indicate the amendments that were made in committee. There was one that you will find on the first page, 2D, that states, any capital expenditure from the fund shall be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and approval of the city council. Capital expenditure is defined as a fixed asset costing $15,000 or more with an expected useful life of 5 years or more. The intent of that was to provide a little more control a lot more control over capital expenses from the revolving funds. The second amendment was the deletion of engineering services in the revolving funds. That's because there's a different statute that actually applies that allows that to be put in a fund for contractors. And that's essentially what this revolving fund is. Money comes has come into it and then is spent for engineering services on projects. It's a money in, money out fund. So that has been deleted from the revolving funds. We also, at the Ward 2 Councilor's suggestion, we added 2 new revolving funds, one for solid waste and one for the assessor's office. Now, this is the first year that we have done an ordinance. In the past, we just created them every year. Mass Modernization Act allows us to do it once in an ordinance, and then we don't have to continue doing it every year. However, every year, as you just said, we shall set the limits on each of those revolving funds. And by ordinance, we could change the revolving funds. Vote was 2-1 in favor of recommending approval.
Further discussion, Councilor Z.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I was the no again, and I'd like to explain why. So first thing is, I appreciate the effort of the finance director on D, on the amendment for D. I appreciate him drafting that language. That was one of my, there were really a handful of issues I have with revolving funds that I was trying to ameliorate, and that was a big one, so I appreciate his effort. With that said, the second issue I'd like to resolve for my comfort is that, as we know and as you've seen in your other documentation, some of these funds have been building quite large balances over the years. And it's my desire that those funds close out to the general fund, and if they're not being used by the revolving fund, that they come back and be able to be used for something else. And in some cases, it's substantial money. One, as you know, we dealt with in the last couple of weeks, the parking fund, over $1 million. But there are others. For example, we learned in the process of doing this, one of the new funds we're looking at, the solid waste fees, has a balance of some $306,000. So some of these funds are accumulating, and this is money that residents are paying. So I think we want to use that towards some of the goals that we have. So with that said, I'd like to make an amendment to insert E after D, and it would read as follows: any amount of unencumbered funds in excess of $200,000, with the exception of recreational services, which shall be $350,000, as of the final day, shall revert to the general fund. And let me just explain, if I may, what that means. So
let's see if we can get a second.
Second.
First. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Discussion.
Right. So
thank you, Councilor.
In committee, we talked about this funds, and I really appreciate the administration's efforts to do some transfers out of these funds. We have some of those before us. Appreciate it. I think, though, now that we're setting it by ordinance, meaning making it the law in the city of Newburyport, we ought to have it reflect what we want. By setting a cap of 200, I think it's being more than reasonable and more than generous. So in other words, if a fund has $200,005 in it on July 2nd, $5 would come back to the general fund. So funds can retain a healthy balance for some odds and ends that may come and go as the years oscillate and money comes and goes. And we made I made special dispensation for rec services, which I know has a lot of timing issues where they're really January to December, but the fiscal year ends in the middle. I would ask for your support on it. I don't think revolving funds were designed to hold millions of dollars in aggregate, which they are today. And while I appreciate the efforts of the administration, I think this is a law, and I actually didn't hear any dissent from my colleagues in committee about the concept, but they didn't want to vote for it. I hope you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Councillor Eigenman.
Well, a couple points. Now, first of all, the spending limits, the only fund that has a spending limit over $200,000 in any one year is recreational services at $370,000. Everything else is well below $100,000. So essentially, the councillor from Ward 1's amendment would allow a two-year total revenue to be held. So I think that is very moderate. I guess my question is, I'd like to hear from anybody who thinks it's a bad idea. I want to know why.
Further discussion. Councillor Tontar.
The relevant amount is actually the current balance. I think we had that in the previous packet. And, you know, I didn't vote for it because there's no current balance except for used services that's even over 100,000. So I didn't think it would have any bite or any effect for that matter. There's just no funds. I mean, the highest is, I think, recreational services, and that's 72,000 right now. Not too much higher because I collect money. In terms of as of May 1st.
Thank you, Councillor. Further discussion. Councillor Earls.
A point of clarification. You seem to be jumping ahead. There was already amendments requested, and engineering services eliminated, assessor and solid waste added, and 2D added. And now we're jumping into 2E. Is it now proper to go back, and I'd like to ask questions about the assessor, but it seems as if there was two separate amendments made. So should we act on one, or will it be a friendly amendment to the original?
I'm going to ask the clerk for a rule.
Yeah, my sense is before we add confusion to the mix, my sense was you were taking it out with those amendments. So it's approved with those four changes, if you will.
With those amendments.
Yeah. So there's not an amendment on the floor per se.
So you're the amendment.
He's the only amendment.
And that's then there was a motion
That's the
to...
floor amendment. The other ones were made in committee.
So there's an motion to approve with certain changes.
Thank you
Now
for the
there's an
clarification.
amendment on the floor.
My questions have to wait.
Yes, exactly.
If we could resolve this amendment, then we can have at it with
Further
this.
discussion.
If I could understand it, Mr. President?
Yes.
So the amendment right now is that any fund that has greater than $200,000, you would send that monies to the general fund.
Correct.
With one exception, rec services. Is that the
services.
same as youth services?
Yes.
It is. It's just it's titled recreational services is the formal name of
And that's
it.
$350,000. Anything in excess of that goes to the general fund also.
Correct. As of the close of each fiscal year.
350 or 300?
Councillor Cobb.
Sorry?
350 or 300?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I am willing to think through this, but I would love to hear from our finance director who's here on the ramifications. Right now, it looks like that makes sense. I'm curious to know what happens down the road. And so is it possible to hear what the ramifications would be for that amendment?
I would be happy to.
Could you identify yourself for the folks at home?
Ethan Manning, Finance Director and City Auditor. As the councillor from Ward 4 attested to, there are really no balances that would fall under this threshold, so I'm not sure what the practical implication would be. And just to point out, there are not millions of dollars in fund balances here. There's actually $541,000 if you exclude the paid parking fund that was just reclassified. So I just want to set the record straight on that. I worry about setting these arbitrary limits into the code. We're kind of setting ourselves up to change them in the future, especially if they don't really have an impact in the immediate term that I could see for at least the next few years.
Thank you. Councillor Eigenman.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the position of the chairman and the finance director that they don't believe the $200,000 limit would apply this fiscal year. It wouldn't come up. But I mean, we're trying to write legislation to go forward forever. We have to anticipate other situations. And yes, the downtown parking fund was recently changed to a different type of account. That's true. But I still have not heard a policy argument why in a revolving fund, this is not a reserve account, It is not an enterprise fund. Why in a revolving account you would want a department to be able to hold 2 times their annual spending limit without ever coming back to the council? I don't think that's good governance. I have not heard a good argument for why it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zede.
Like they say, no good deed goes unpunished. I picked 200 purposefully high to just make the point that this is the policy that the City Council of Newburyport is setting for these revolving funds. I understand. Believe it or not, I can read the numbers. I know that all of them are under 200. I know that this would not immediately take any money out of any existing revolving fund now that the parking has been resolved. But again, this is an ordinance, which is the first time we're doing this, thanks to the Mass Mod Act. So we're setting the law for the next million years. And we meet every 2 weeks, so if we need to make a corrective action, we'll be here in 2 weeks from today, and we'll be 2 weeks here from thereafter, and would be happy to do it. But I think setting the limit high was actually kind of my compromise right off the bat. I think you can make an argument for setting it lower, but I think 200 makes the point that these are not for stacking or piling up cash. And not to reignite a debate from a couple weeks ago, but if your fees are set in a compensatory manner, there should be no additional monies in there. So even though the Ward 4 Councilor and I seem to disagree, we actually agree more than we think, and that is that you shouldn't be making a profit on some of these. So I don't want to get too far into that. But again, it's 200. The point I'm trying to say is there's no bite in it because we don't want to. Didn't want to take money out of a revolving fund today. I just want the policy to be set so that 50 years from now, when we don't have a finance director as good as Ethan, that there's not $500,000 sitting in one of these accounts, and we have tons of needs around the city that can use it.
And in summary, if we meet twice a month for 2 million years, we have 26 million opportunities to change this. Is that right?
The math sounds correct.
Yeah. Don't count on my math. Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, I do have another policy concern, and it is precisely the compensatory principle. If we regularly run $200,000 and more surpluses in these revolving funds, then we really ought to lower the fees. First of all. Secondly, you'll note that we are transferring, we have an order before us that we kept in committee to transfer out of the parking revolving fund and some of the other revolving funds. And the administration took great care to direct them in relatively defensible areas. All right. So just like what the council did a couple of weeks ago in terms of saying that parking revenue could be spent on anything, I think the city exposes itself at the very margins, all right, to an argument that fees are being charged too high if we're just putting all this into the general fund and we can't defend where the money is being spent. So I mean, again, the administration took great care to allocate them toward defensible areas.
Councilor Khan?
Thank you. I'm not going to vote in favor of the amendment. I did look at other municipalities and cities on how they handle their revolving funds. This type of arbitrary number setting is not there. I think how we're doing it right now makes sense, seeing the numbers make sense, and I just think right now it is going to go into code, and we could make changes after if we need to based on what happens and how it progresses over time. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Agaman. I'm sorry, I'm going to let Councilor Vogel in. I didn't see your hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too am going to rise in opposition. I haven't heard a compelling argument. I'll turn to the finance director. He doesn't seem to see any compelling argument. We are writing it into code. It is something that we're taking up right tonight without a whole lot of consideration. I'm going to stand not in favor.
Councilor Agaman.
I simply do not understand the argument that if you shift excess money to the general fund, that gives an argument that you're charging too much. Whereas if, say, the Veterans Revolving Fund, which has a maximum spending limit every year of only $2,000, it could have $200,000 in it sitting there for years on end, and that doesn't give an argument for excessive fees. So that's a specious argument, I believe. Also, I've only been on the council, this is my 5th round on budget. For the first 4 years, no money came out of the revolving fund. I am grateful, finally, that some of the surplus that's been sitting in these accounts is now going to be transferred to something. That's great, I'm not talking about that. But essentially, unless the mayor believes that it's necessary to bring us a transfer, the city council is surrendering all control. Again, I think the motion actually is way too giving at $200,000. Some of these accounts, $5,000 annual spending on City Hall maintenance, $6,000 for animal control, $3,000 disabilities commission. These are fractions of the $200,000. And this council is saying, no big deal. We'll just let the department heads have these war chests that they can spend at their discretion. I don't understand how that has anything to do with a revolving account. It's not a reserve account. You know what a reserve account is. So I gather I don't have the votes, or rather the counselor who made the motion doesn't, but wow.
Thank you.
Further discussion? We've exhausted this. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this matter.
This is on a roll call on the motion to amend 200,000 and 300,000 rec services. Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
No.
Councilor Eigenman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
No.
Councilor O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
No.
Councilor Vogel?
No.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Council President?
No.
Motion passes. Needing 6.
Thank you.
It passed.
So the motion to amend passed.
So it's a motion approved with that amendment on the floor.
That's why I keep quiet. We decide now.
And to the initial proposal, which was, let's recap, please.
So the initial proposal was motion to amend, motion to approve with the amendments that were recited. There were actually 4 of them. 2D, there's also a striking of engineering services on page 3, and then addition on page 6 of solid waste and the assessor's office.
Before that, an additional amendment?
Councilor Earls.
Okay, because we've adopted this, it appears that recreational services has had their hands lopped off for some arbitrary reason. Everybody else has been raised up to 200,000. Director of Youth Services is now at recreational service at 370, it's now at 350. So we're knocking that down. So let's bring that up to 400,000. I don't understand why everyone's getting this war chest, yet we're knocking down the recreational services by $20,000.
So your motion is to increase...
To increase to 400,000.
To 400,000. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
So
It is seconded. Discussion.
we are taking up the ordinance to set up the funds, not to set the
order,
limits.
yeah, right.
Is that what you're referring to?
We're not, yeah.
That's an order. They're 2 different items. One establishes the funds. Yeah. Sorry, my apologies. We're up on Ordinance 13, which establishes the funds. Then we have the second one, which is the order setting the limits. But if I may respond to that, we're not lopping off anything. The limit can still be 350. We're just saying if you have more than this dollar amount at the end of the year, it's coming home to the city to be used for other items. So the spending limit can absolutely can exceed the 200 or the 350. And throughout the year, they might spend $400,000. But on June 30th, which is the last day of the year, when you wake up on July 1, if you have more than 200, the excess over 200 and all funds would come back to the city. We've already voted on this, but in the excess over 350 in the case of youth services, which as has been specified by the Chair of Budget and Finance, the Finance Director doesn't apply to any existing balances that we have. So due thought has been given to that.
Councilor Tantar.
So the current balance in recreational services or youth services is $72,000 as of May 1st. So I guess what the at-large council is concerned with is that before June 30th, that would get up to $370,000, and then $20,000 would have to go into the general fund, and they wouldn't have sufficient funds to pay for the programs. I'm going by memory, and I'd ask the finance director, has that ever gone over 350 by the end of the year? I don't think it has. My experience.
I don't believe so off the top of my head. I know the balance as of June 30th. We looked at it in committee. It's floated between 250 and 300 over the years.
Right.
I'm not sure that it's ever gotten that high. It would be nice to clarify. Was that amendment as of June 30th or at any point?
No, the close of it's July 1 when you wake up in the morning, what's the balance in the fund?
Sure.
And that's why it was 350, because as we did talk about, it's been between 250 and 300. I wanted to give some cushion. I mean, really, honestly, there's nothing nefarious here. It's not trying to rip away money from revolving funds that need it. It is what it is.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call again.
This is a motion to increase youth services from that 350 to 400,000.
Is that what you wanted to?
Yep. We're not in that ordinance yet.
I mean, that's what the motion was.
That's a different.
It's applicable. And it was seconded by Councilor Vogel.
So the motion, as stated by the clerk.
Motion to amend.
Motion to amend. Please, Councilor Junta, clarify for us.
This is bad.
Aren't we on ordinance 13 right now?
Not ordinance 28, yes.
Yes, we are, that's what.
No.
No?
He wants to amend the amendment.
Amend the amendment. Amend the amendment.
I believe it was intentional.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
This is, again, I won't repeat myself, it's a motion to amend. Councilor Devlin?
No.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman? No. Councilor Junta?
No.
Councilor Khan?
No.
Councilor Bryan?
No.
Councilor Shan?
No.
Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Council President?
No.
Motion fails. We are now back on the floor with a motion to approve with the amendments.
Motion to approve with amendments.
Seconded.
And it has been seconded, so is there further discussion?
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
So, 2 new revolving funds, is that correct? That's what's being proposed in the amendment. One is the assessor. I guess I'd like to know where the fee's coming from and who will be the authorized spender of the funds. Also, the solid waste, who would be the authorized spender of the funds and where the fee's coming from.
Thank you. Councilor Tantar.
For solid waste, this is the fee we pay for composting, for access, and it would, if you recall, every year, twice a year, we get an appropriation to repair the chipper.
Yep.
All right, so that's what it would be spent on. All right, it's revenue, so that's it seemed to fit. It's a revolving fund. The assessor, finance director is going to have to help me out of that.
Mr. Manning?
So the assessor's fee, there's currently a small receipts reserve for appropriation fund with, I think, it's a $2,000 balance. We're not talking big money, but what this fund is intended to do is that there are fees charged by the assessor's office, basically for records requests and a butters list that might need to be generated for a variety of reasons, and then that fee would cover the expenses of sending those out.
And carbon costs and that.
Exactly.
And who would, I'm sorry?
Councilor.
Who would be the authorized spender?
The assessor.
Thank you.
Councilor Zede.
Yeah, I just want to note for everybody that the table is very helpful, and that Ethan worked very hard to keep it from going over into another page width-wise. So you'll notice the 2 new funds are on page 6. It tells you where the money comes from, what it can be used for, and who is the authorized spender. It's the same ordinance. You should have that.
Further discussion?
Thank you.
Hearing none. We'll vote on the amended proposal.
This is the motion to approve as amended.
Motion to approve as amended.
Thank you.
It would be an ordinance first reading.
So
Roll
let's
call.
take a roll call on this.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes. Didn't remember where we were.
You know, that's where we are. We are the approving with the amendments as first recited by Councilor Tantar, and the amendment that was put forth by Councilor Z, the 200,000 and 300,000.
And really, yes.
Really, yes.
Yes.
Then really, yes. Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Bryan?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Z?
Yes.
Council President Connell?
Yes.
Motion passes first reading. May be debated again next time.
Budget and Finance, anything else?
Yes, motion to remove order number 28, revolving fund spending limits.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of removing this from committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Approved and seconded. Motion to approve as amended in committee and seconded. Discussion.
I also have an amendment to make from the floor. Actually, we did this in committee, but once again, it didn't make it into the packet. We reduced the spending limit for the electrical inspector from $95,000 to $60,000.
So,
Guilty.
Do we have to vote on that?
Yes.
seconded by, thank you.
What was the
I can
number?
always count.
60,000, 95,000 to 60,000.
Is that a motion to approve as amended? Or a motion to amend?
That's an emotion, that's a motion, that's an emotion, and that's a motion to amend.
I'll second that motion.
Been seconded, thank you.
Discussion. Councilor Genta.
If I could just get an explanation on why we're going from 95 to 60, just curious.
Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, we just didn't, if you look at year-to-date, and you have current balance is $57,000. They have spent $48,000. Thought that $95,000 was unnecessary.
Further discussion. Hearing none. We'll take a roll call vote. All those in favor of the amended,
Roll call?
what did I just say?
You said we'll take a roll call.
No, a voice vote, please.
Thank you.
All those in favor of the amended proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there anything else in Budget and Finance?
Didn't we just, that was the amendment, right? No, so a motion, we have a motion to approve as amended.
I think you just moved to amend. The
You
motion
got
to
an
approve would
amendment
be in
first.
order.
A motion to approve is in order now. We haven't passed it yet.
Second.
Thank you. You're welcome. We did that.
Okay. Motion to approve. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else?
Motion to remove transfer number 9, free cash to snow and ice.
All those in favor of removing this from committee say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Committee recommends by a vote of 3.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
And seconded. Councilor Tantar.
Committee recommends by a vote of 3-0 to vote approval.
Motion is to approve by 3-0 recommendation. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Anything else?
Motion to remove transfer number 10.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Get that?
Motion to approve.
Second. Moved and seconded for transfer number 10. Discussion. Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, the committee recommended by a vote of 3-0 to approve.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I would just like to note to the committee why we did not take out the capital plan for fiscal year 18. We had a number of questions on some of the lines. We have a pretty constrained schedule because of budget workshops. So as a committee, we decided that basically we did not have a day when we could bring the department heads in. We were seeing them over the next 2 weeks anyway for the workshops. So we put off voting on the capital plan for fiscal year 18 until the June 11th meeting.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there anything else in Budget and Finance?
No, we are done.
Oh, thank you. Education? Councilor Genta?
Meeting announcement. Our next meeting will be June 4th at 5:30 p.m. at the Senior Community Center. All are welcome, and if anybody has some topics they'd like discussed, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have graduation coming up. General government. Nothing at this time. License and permits.
Nothing at this time.
Neighborhood and city services.
Nothing at this time.
Planning and development.
Nothing at this time.
Motion to withdraw ordinance 15, marijuana zoning cultivation council of the whole.
Second.
Then motion to remove from committee?
Yes.
It's been seconded.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve as amended in committee.
Motion to approve as amended in committee. Is there a second?
In committee.
Discussion.
Yes, just to catch everybody up. First, I want to acknowledge the many speakers tonight and at previous hearings. We've taken an awful lot of testimony, not just as committee of the whole, but also jointly with the planning board. The word respect, I think, came up from some of the NAID people, and I just want to acknowledge that there is absolute respect. They've been forthright in their position of opposition, especially Mr. Zampel. So really, there's no doubt about that. Below, what we decided in conjunction with the planning board was that we were not ready to go forward with the retail sales, and we recommended unanimously bringing out cultivation, but having staff and the city solicitor alter that ordinance so that all of the relevant provisions that were in the retail sales ordinance number 16 were imported into this ordinance 15 so it could stand on its own. Just a few more words. Again, that was the unanimous thought of the committee below and the recommendation of the planning board. Speaking for myself, again, I want to emphasize, although I had not come to agree with the NAID members, I can't in good conscience find a way to bar marijuana cultivation altogether. There was a suggestion in testimony tonight that it be included in a moratorium, but we did look at this very carefully, all of the issues, security, smells, you name it, buffer zones. We've also been told by a city solicitor in an opinion, and the city solicitor in the body of John Eichman appeared in person at our hearing with the planning board, that we can limit the number and square footage of marijuana cultivation facilities. Now, there's no case law on that, but there's no case law on any of this. So don't let that stop you, I don't think. I do support personally, the idea of examining how big an area. That may be some debate about that tonight. We did not get a recommendation below on that, though. I want to make that clear. The committee did not make a recommendation on that. We also took testimony from KP Law that existing medicinal marijuana dispensaries can, under state law, if they were in existence as of a cutoff date of July 1, 2017, be converted to retail sales. That was a question. But for the record, we don't have any medicinal marijuana dispensaries that were in business at that time. So that's not a concern for Newburyport. We are able to distinguish between retail and non-retail without regard to medicinal versus non-medicinal. Finally, on the host agreement, we did have testimony in that for one particular applicant. You heard from Paul Don, who's a property owner at Opportunity Way. He has an applicant for approximately 90,000 square foot facility, and that's a matter of public record, what they are saying about the host agreement. But again, in our deliberations below, we did not place any particular committee emphasis on, because of the host agreement, that's why it's good zoning. That was not how we approached the matter. And that's all I had from committee. I think there may be some other speakers, please. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councilor Shand.
I'd like to offer an amendment. So if you go to section 31, so XXX1-D, which is the license requirements and conditions of use. It's the 4th page in, I believe.
Is there a second to this amendment?
Second.
Second, for discussion purposes, Councillor Shan.
We haven't even amended it yet.
That's what I'm saying, discussion, Councillor Shan.
All right, so the amendment is, for number 5, it says the total cumulative square footage of all marijuana cultivators permitted within the business and industry park zoning districts shall be limited to 300,000 square feet. That's what we currently have. What I would like to amend that to is 100,000 square feet.
Second.
I'm not done. I want to put a period after square feet, and I want to add the next sentence. The total number of marijuana cultivators in the business and industry park zoning districts 1 and 1B shall not exceed 2. Period.
See how many?
2. Period.
I still second.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the clerk can summarize this proposal for us.
Well, it's pretty straightforward. It is in addition to paragraph 5, which is under section D, that now currently says that the cultivators would be permitted to have up to 300,000 square feet. That reduces it to 100,000 square feet and adds a second sentence that says the total number of marijuana cultivators in the business and industry park zoning district 1 and 1B shall not exceed 2.
So it's a belt and suspenders approach.
That's first and second.
And we had a second from?
Charlie.
Actually, originally Council O'Brien.
All right. Discussion of this amendment. Councillor Shan.
Okay.
Go first.
So when the discussion on expanding the zoning for the marijuana in the business park started in January, it was simply to expand the current MMOD to the lots opposite of Malcolm Hoyt Drive, basically creating a corridor. You have this map in your packet tonight. So at the first planning and development hearing meeting we had in February, the board recommended that we expand the zone to the whole park while applying the legal buffer zones. We also agreed, after hearing from the business park, the concerns of having retail in the business park, and we removed retail from this ordinance. So that the map that we're looking at tonight does not have retail in it, and it's the entire business park with the buffer zones. I believe that's the second map we have in our packet.
Andy, why don't you put it up?
So at our last planning and development hearing meeting, where we discussed this map in May, the concern was brought up about having a marijuana monoculture in the business park. And so given how the current ordinance was written with 300,000 square feet, it seemed rather large. So and without restrictions to the number of businesses, we could certainly have more than a few recreational, cultivation facilities. So that's why I'm proposing this amendment. So I don't think anyone has a crystal ball that can predict where marijuana is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years in Massachusetts. But since we are just starting here, I think it is okay to go slow. I think even the governor has said we should crawl, walk, and run when it comes to the marijuana industry. And that is why I am recommending a cap limiting the total number of cultivators to 2. So we currently have 2 potential proprietors, and they are required to have a host agreement signed by the mayor, and with the respect, I believe the council president will be part of that conversation as well. You know, and after these growers start their businesses and they start blending into the park, and as we hope and expect them to do without any issues, we can certainly look at expanding this again, but at the appropriate time. So, as I said, I think it's okay to start out slowly. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Further discussion. Councillor Vogel.
I just wanted to check to see, there's been no adjustment to the words which equates to roughly 10%.
I was taking that out.
That's out completely?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Sorry.
Further discussion. Councillor Genta, I believe.
I think think part of the reason for this amendment, well, I know part of the reason for this amendment is because people keep telling us that, marijuana is, it's the gold rush. You gotta get on top of it. You gotta be quick. You gotta get the golden goose. But what we've seen for some other states is overcultivation too fast actually becomes a serious problem. So for us to be able to restrict, again, to crawl, to walk before we run, it gives us the ability to see what's going on in the Commonwealth, what's going on in New England, so we don't oversaturate what's happening here. So it's giving us some control. If we find out that this is something that is working out very well, we can always come back and we can expand it. But this gives us the ability to see what is going on, what's going on good, what's not going on good. And it also gives us the ability to make sure that we don't get in the same situation that Oregon's in right now.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Tantar.
Yes, one of the arguments originally made in opposition to cultivation in the park was that it would reduce property values there. So I actually went out and looked at the evidence where it has, again, for a short period of time, and actually I found the opposite. What I found is that property values in industrial parks where cultivators located were going up, and as a matter of fact, they were going up, I think, in a manner that perhaps could be seen to be dangerous, right? In that, for instance, someone who owned a building in the industrial park with relatively little internal infrastructure might, the building currently now worth $1 million, someone could come in and offer them $5 million for it. All right, so you'd have, and that's the monoculture argument, the fact that there's going to be such tremendous demand for location in the park that the amounts offered will be very high, and you can have current occupied buildings that are bought out, and indeed that has happened in Colorado, all right, and so you get that increase. That coupled, right, with the level of uncertainty, as the Ward 5 councilor said, in Oregon, overproduction, it's going to take a while for that to be strained out. I think if you take those two together, if you allow, broad cultivation, 5, 6, 7 manufacturers or cultivators, and then there's a crash, and that could add that. Then you could have an adverse effect. So I support the amendment. I think we can start out with 100,000 square feet and limit it to 2 cultivators, and we can review it in the future.
The original proposal was for 10%, and I don't know how in anybody's book 10% could be oversaturating the market, honestly. And I could be wrong, but years ago I had a talk with the assessor, and if I understood him correctly at the time, I said, how do you assess my building? Well, I do comps. I look at comparable buildings around. How do you do in the industrial park? I look at the value of the use of the building. So I said, in other words, if somebody's warehousing, it's a real low value, right, compared to high-end manufacturing. Yep. Do the two equate? Nope. I don't look at the two. I look at what the value of the building is. So if we have 5 buildings that are now raised in value, that's a bad thing? We like our property devaluing? I don't understand that argument. It doesn't affect the neighbors in industrial park. It's different. It's not your home that's compared to your neighbor or one down the street. It's an individual building. So I don't think your argument makes sense that, oh my gosh, we're going to price people out of the industrial park because all the buildings are going to be raised in tax value. No, it's individual use. 10%. How can 10% be oversaturating the market? And 2 buildings? That's basically, it's now a foot race to see who can get for the first 2 buildings occupied, and then the other person who wants to rent their building out, I can't by law. What if we said, you know what? Let's limit it to 10% woodworking, 10% printing, 10% commercial laundry. That's all I want to see, because I don't want to oversaturate the market. Because what if commercial laundry suddenly took a dive, or they shipped it to Canada? That would be absurd. You'd look at me and laugh. Well, that's what we're doing right here. We're taking a legal business and saying, let's stunt its growth.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Devlin.
I just have two questions, and it's for anybody that can answer it. Where do we come up with $100,000, 100,000 square feet? And two, what's the mechanism by which they get this, either a special permit or some sort of variance? And does it run with the property so that essentially what we're saying is the first two people who get it are going to have it forever?
Councilor Ackerman?
I can't answer the question about the 100,000, but I was asked before about, it is a special permit. Special permits may be specific in Massachusetts to the applicant. They do not necessarily run with the land, whereas a variance does run with the land.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't gotten to it yet, but another amendment we could make is that these special permits go with the applicant. Specify that the planning board has to do that. You could do that. Right now, it's in the planning board's discretion.
Councilor Shan?
So sure, the 100,000 square feet came from the fact that we do have two proprietors that are interested right now. One is Mr. Don with his 86,000 square foot building, and Mr. D'Souza, whose building is 5,000 square feet. So those are the two that are options right now.
Councilor Devlin?
So, look, I am all for incrementalism. I think that's a good idea. I think that's a wise idea. That's why I thought the first, the counter to the first proposal that, we were just doing some properties across the street. Well, yeah, we were expanding this incrementally, and we weren't doing it for any particular person, other than that there was a person who had expressed some interest for their building. So, they coincided together, and I don't see a problem with that. Where I'm worried, but some of the concerns about that first proposal was spot zoning. And I don't think so, because it was several parcels of land, not just the spot zoning to me is that one parcel of land. I am a little concerned now that we based 100,000 square feet on the amount of square feet and the number of people who have put forth or who have floated proposals. Again, incremental could be not 300, but 150 or 200. For me, maybe 10% in some people's mind is too much. I don't know. I haven't thought. I haven't decided on that. I wanted to listen to what everybody had to say. But 100,000 sounds like we are specifically writing it for two people. Yes, it's incremental, but could we increase it some more to make it? It's still incremental if we increase it some more. But those are my thoughts, and I'm not putting forth that amendment. So,
further discussion. Councilor Zede?
I just wanted to talk about the run with the land versus run with the, because that's an important question for me as well. If you look at 31H.
Are we talking about the amendment? Point of order, aren't we talking about the amendment?
Yes. Excuse me. Yes, I'm going to give him some latitude here. I think he is backing into it. I'm going to give him some latitude. Let him go on with it.
Yes.
31.
Well, I guess I can hold it. It's kind of a general thing, so I will.
I thought you wanted to address the matter of run with the land or run with...
I kind of, for a brief moment, forgot we were in the amendment, so I apologize. It's okay, I can come back to it.
No? All right. I'll withdraw. Further discussion. Councilor Earls.
I can only speak for myself, and I've seen one of these businesses in action. I hope we're not voting, not experiencing one of these businesses firsthand, and I fear many in this room may be. They're run so tightly, it makes liquor, this is cultivation only, I know it's not dispensary, but it makes wineries and breweries look ridiculous. You can't be a felon to work here, but you can be a felon to work in a brewery. So there's laws that govern this type of business that are far exceeding any other business that we're proposing in this city. I certainly hope it's not a morality issue, right? Because we're talking about law here. So it's legal now in Massachusetts to cultivate marijuana. So I really hope in no one's mind, and I'm sure it's not, I just want to mention that this is not a morality issue. This is a legal issue.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion. Councilor Devlin.
I also just suggest, in the nature of, we're talking about, I met with some industrial park people at the chamber, and, look, they've we've got valuable businesses out there that they've worked really hard to build and establish, and they were completely, you know, we have to respect their truth as well, and they're completely within their it's the right thing for them to be concerned about their business, because it's probably the most important thing that they've put together. So I think we are offering a compromise here. The monoculture one for me was the strongest argument. There is lots of money out there, and they will pay many times over what the property value is for a place where they can cultivate. We have a good industrial park, we have good roads and access to there and access to major highways, good infrastructure. So there is some concern in my mind that I'd like to throw out for discussion about the 100,000 is it enough? I mean, is it, you know, wouldn't it be better to have 200,000 where we could potentially have 3 people, 100,000, 90,000, 50,000, 50,000, and that gives us a more stable, one of the arguments was we have a very stable industrial park because it's diversified. Well, you know, three host agreements so that if one doesn't do well, maybe the other 2 are doing well and we get our 3% out of it. You would think that we'd want to diversify on this a little bit more, and we're limiting our size right now. We do have to come back and go through all this again. So.
Thank you, Councilor. Additional discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote on the amendment.
This is an amendment to 100,000 from 300,000 to strike, which equates to the end of the sentence, and to add shall not exceed 2 cultivators. Right. Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
No.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tonto?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
No.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Council President O'Connell?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And now?
Now for the main motion on the floor, which was approved with that amendment.
As amended, thank you. I should just hand the gavel over to him. Discussion on the principal proposal. Councilor Zede.
So I wanted to talk to the run with the land issue that I was holding my breath on. So 31H, I just would like to discuss with you, with everybody, Roman numeral 3, as well as Roman numeral, pardon me, 5. So 3 says a special permit authorizing the establishment of a business shall be valid only for the specific person or entity and only for the site on which the marijuana business has been authorized by special permit. If any license by the marijuana business has been revoked or the license is to be transferred, then a new special permit shall be required. So that's 1. And then 5 is a special permit shall only be valid for use by the applicant and become null and void upon the sale of the transfer license. So for the record, I just want to say what that means to me. That means to me that it's a specific person at a specific place. So these are not going to be taken by acquisition or just become something of a dynasty. I know we have some experience with that here as the transient vendors issues we've dealt with in the past, where we had these legacy agreements that lasted forever. And then the second thing I wanted to say is I would like to be corrected, but I believe the host agreement will also come to the council. It would be negotiated by the administration, but then come to the council. Am I wrong on that? To me, that's a contract. Does anybody have any clarification on that? That was always my understanding. I believe, I looked at Amesbury, and I believe their host agreements come to the council, so I just wanted to confirm that. And then, just to make some comments, I'll have more to say during the moratorium discussion, but I just want to respond a little bit briefly to the at-large councilor's comments. I think the biggest thing I'm dealing with in my own mind is the whole uncertainty of the whole thing, particularly with state law. I mean, I'll kind of hold more of my comments, but to me, that's one of the biggest things is that they're kind of moving the ground underneath us, and they usually don't do that. Usually they build new land in front of you and say, if you wish to trek to this new land, you can adopt, we do it all the time here. The Mass Modernization Act passes, and then it prompts us to do something. But when they're short of changing the underlying foundation, it makes it very difficult for us to anticipate where they could be going. And that applies to me both in the concept of cultivation as well as in retail. And that's probably what gives me the most pause is, they've changed it already several times, and what will they do in the next 6 to 12 months? I don't know. It could be good and it could be bad. It's just we don't know. So I'll speak more to that next time around. Thank you.
So, go ahead, Councilor Genta.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the at-large council too. The one thing we know about cultivation, and you asked if it's a moral thing, and it's not. The one thing about cultivation is you've got a 4-year history right now. You can see cultivators in the state that have done a good job and some that have done a poor job. So we've had a 4-year learning experience on that. But we also have an industrial park who really doesn't want this. So we're at a point right now as, the governing body of the city that we put some restrictions on it. And we need to see how this blends with the park. We, again, need to crawl. But the one thing we do have in our favor right now is history. Not only history of what's happened in the last 4 years in Massachusetts, but also what's happened in Colorado, what's happened in Oregon, and what's happened in California. So there's some good reading on that to see what over-cultivation will do. And the last thing we want is an empty industrial park. If you want to see values go up, fill up your buildings. That makes rents go up, that makes values go up. So that's just where I'm coming from on this, is that it's not out of ignorance and it's not out of morality, it's just being very cautious with this.
Councilor Agaman.
Yeah, just to amplify what Councilor Devlin at large and Ward 5 Councilor just said, that's exactly how it went down in the meetings. So there was no moralization done in any of our deliberations. And I do agree with the council at large. When we met, I also met with Nate. He met with Nate in person. Their best argument is the monoculture argument. And let me just explain it from a land use point of view. Yes, I absolutely want the tax money, but that's not what we're looking at. So for example, if you know that you can chase a high-paying tenant, you will often hold back your property and leave it vacant until you can land that high-paying tenant. So in many ways, zoning is a tool that you can prevent that kind of speculation. That's not uncommon. Even the example given was things like carpentry and so on, but there are other uses like banks, people holding out for banks because they're good paying tenants and leaving retail spaces empty, which is a problem. That's one. The other is that I want to recognize what Councilor from Ward 1 pointed out. I think it is correct. It is covered in that section, this idea that it's specific to the applicant. So I have been looking at 31C Charlie where it's not mentioned, but it's covered. So I think we're good on that. And with that, I'm ready to approve.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
It's approved with that one amendment. Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Bryan?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
I just want to make a point of order, if I may.
And so by 11-0,
Motion passes.
motion passes.
Ordinance,
Thank you.
first reading.
That's all I wanted to say, was just so the public knows. This is the first reading. One more
First reading.
in 2 weeks to have it become a law. So everybody knows. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else coming out of planning and development?
Yes. Really? Motion to remove ordinance 21 and ordinance to amend an ordinance entitled zoning ordinance of the city of Newburyport.
Second.
Medical marijuana temporary moratorium.
Second.
By Councilor Khan. All those in favor of taking this out of committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, it's out.
Motion to approve as amended in committee below.
Moved to take it out of committee with amendments. Motion to approve with amendments. Discussion, Councilor Eigenman.
Okay, I'll be quicker on this one. We've covered a lot of this ground. So in the packet are the changes that were made in committee. Basically, there was a little bit of a difference of opinion on this one with the planning board. The planning board recommended not having any reference in the end date for the moratorium to a possible referendum. They did not want to do that. So that's their recommendation. However, the three of us on the committee below, informed by the testimony of counsel of the whole, we put forward this version, which says it's the earliest. The temporary moratorium ends on the earliest of the following three events: December 31st of this year, or certification by the city clerk of the results of a referendum on the matter, or final adoption of amendments to the zoning ordinance on the matter. So the city council still holds the cards. Again, this only relates to retail. The reason why the planning board and the committee below wanted to do a moratorium is that whether or not we want to do retail in the city, whether or not we want to put it up for a vote, we weren't very happy with the zones we had. And there was some debate about, well, how long will it take to figure out where to put the zones? You know, we don't know exactly how long. Will it take till December? Probably not. So I'll share that testimony. No one thought it would take quite that long. With that, I'll sit.
Further discussion on the proposal for a moratorium. Councilor Zeid.
Yeah, so I wanted to comment on this. I made one of my biggest concerns I've already mentioned during the previous one, but I really wanted to just take a moment to appreciate the questions that came from the public during public comment. Like, what's the problem, guys? You know, that's kind of what I heard is why can't you figure it out? And I want to explain. I'm not on the committee, but I want to explain where I think we are. And if I'm to be corrected by anybody, I will accept the correction. But we had a marijuana ad hoc committee, and they were tasked with looking at this. The biggest challenge I think that I've heard from the ad hoc committee is the state didn't fortify or codify their stuff until March 31st, I believe was the date. Somebody might correct me, I may be a little bit off. So we're not, we haven't been sitting on our thumbs, so to say. And I think I want to just appreciate some of the work that's gone in by different people. And what I think has been found is the bottom line is very simple. There are three areas of retail in the city, basically. The traffic circle area, the downtown area, and Story Ave. And there's been a million maps passed out. I'm sure Andy has all of them on his computer, but the bottom line comes down to where do you want it and what do you want the buffer zones to be? And the original map that I saw early on had buffer zones drawn at various lengths, 100 feet, 250 feet. You'll notice in the previous ordinance we just passed 11-0, we said 500 feet from certain protected uses. Now we're talking about the buffer zone from retail. Well, if you look at what happens when you draw a buffer zone is that the zones get so small that they're almost non-existent, possibly legally arguable to be non-existent. And again, this is my lens, so take it with a grain of salt. But just so then the proposal was to take out the buffer zones and not have any buffer zones, 0-foot buffer from residential.
Councilor, I might interrupt you. The matter is moratorium, not retail yet, so.
Correct.
I would try to focus our discussion on the moratorium question.
Okay, so the map comes in, and I will wrap it up at the President's request, comes in with those buffer zones removed. And if you look at, say, the traffic circle on Route 1, the traffic circle itself actually isn't in the zone because there's a school that's presented there. So I just felt the need to respond to why is there a need for a moratorium? And that's the answer, is that it's not sitting on your thumbs. It's not a moral argument. I actually have no interest in rehashing, or actually never hashed it because I wasn't on the council at the time, but I have no interest in discussing it. I think what we have here is a bona fide land use problem in the city of Newburyport, and we need to solve that problem. And I don't think we can do it by July 1. And I am a firm believer in all options on the table. So I support the moratorium as written because it gives all the potential paths. 100% of the choices are in there. It's a referendum, zoning gets passed, or or we do whatever the third one is. My mind's going mushy here. But you see what I'm saying. It's 100% of the choices, and I do think all of them should be on the table. So that's why I support the moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Sorry for the meandering path.
That's all right. Further discussion. Councilor Genta.
And I'll give you a couple more reasons for the moratorium and why it makes sense. You know, as we've gone through the process, my ward is really not interested in having a marijuana store on Story Avenue or Low Street. And then as you've noticed, the industrial park folks have said they really don't want retail down the industrial park. The chamber has come out and said they don't want retail downtown. So what's happening here is, as the city council, we've kind of got the hot potato that's getting passed around right now. So all we need is some time. This has to get zoned. But then we have our friends at the state. Our friends at the state right now are telling us what we can't do, but they're not really helping us either. You know, they've told the health inspector that edible marijuana is not a food, so it cannot be regulated by the Board of Health. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. One of our speakers tonight said there are things we could regulate through the Board of Health, so I'd like to learn more about that. The Board of Health also told us that you cannot put marijuana and tobacco into the same laws, if you will. They're not the same in the state's eyes. So I can kind of see that, but then that lends a lot of questions to where can be marijuana, where can it be smoked? I'm not 100% sure. I just want to know more about that. I want a little bit more clarity on what our rules and regulations should be. And I think as a city, and I think the residents of the city, really, if you voted to have recreational marijuana, I think you believe that you voted for a well-regulated, safe recreational marijuana. And that's where we're trying to get to, is just getting it to a point where it's regulated well. And for right now, I don't know that the state has given us the answers when they come out with the rules on April 1st and said, guess what, in a couple months it becomes legal, so get up and go. Well, we're just determining right now what we need to do in the city to make sure that we do it right. And so we're taking some time to do it.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Khan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to add on, I don't want to rehash what everyone's already said, but one point I do also want to say is that I am in favor of the moratorium. I'm one of the co-sponsors here. I do think it's really important to take a look and really be very thoughtful on where we do end up zoning, if that's the direction we go, because we will have some type of a cap. And if it's cap at 20% of the liquor licenses, then that could be 2 places. And so if we already tie those places into one location without thinking about it, I think we really do ourselves a disservice. So again, I'm in favor of the moratorium. I think it's really important to step back and think of all locations and all options as we go further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion. Councilor Shannon.
Just to make a point, we started the discussion on cultivation in January, and tonight we took our first vote, so it took us 5 months to get here. I don't think it's going to take us that long to deal with the zoning for recreational, but just we need some time. So I support the moratorium.
Thank you, Councilor. Additional discussion from the council. Councilor Vogel.
Well, I think it's only appropriate that I do stand. And boy, I'll tell you, the floor is ripe to use that term rehash.
We can agree on that.
Believe it or not, we are finding ourselves agreeing more and more, I know. So I'm the last man standing, apparently, perhaps the last person standing, and as you well know, I'm not in favor of the moratorium. I'm not exactly clear as to why. It's fairly binary, if you will, or trinary, if you will. We have 3 places, three districts in our community: downtown, traffic circle, and the Story Avenue. It would be nice to have 3 orders before us, one for each of those. Everybody could vote in favor of all of them, except for a councilor from Ward 5 could vote no on Story Avenue. As well you should, representing your ward. I get it. We don't have that, so we have this sort of coverage. Let's get it together. The state's throwing us stuff. We need to figure it out. It doesn't make any sense to me as to what's taking so long to figure it out. At the planning board meeting, it was said very succinctly by the planning board member, you've only got a couple of places, pick one, or pick 2. With regard to how close it is to residents or not residents, we have liquor stores closer. That's the close to residences. That's the closest thing that we can get to making any type of comparisons, if you will, liquor stores. And we'll get into that whole discussion about liquor and marijuana and all that stuff. And just for a little bit of your edification, I'm going to go back a little bit off topic. If you'll just not gavel me, I would appreciate it. 50 years ago next month, 50 years ago next month, I graduated from John Muir Junior High School in the 9th grade, going on into Burbank Senior High School into the 10th grade, and it was that summer that I smoked my first joint. Know exactly where I was and what happened. I am not an advocate of youth smoking pot. I really am not, and if I were to be able to rewind the tape, I may think about it again. And if you were to tell me when I was 15 years old that I'd be standing here in Newburyport at the age of 65 arguing about zoning recreational marijuana stores, I would not believe you. I probably wouldn't believe anything you said anyway because I was 15, but nonetheless, I wouldn't have believed I'm standing here doing this. Had considerable experience with marijuana, unfortunately some other drugs as well. I've had experience with medicinal marijuana, not for myself, my wife for 6 years, lived with ovarian cancer, smoked pot all the way through it to deal with the chemotherapy. I've bought pot in Washington, D.C., in Washington State. I bought pot in Oregon. 2 different experiences. Walked into the store in Oregon, they take your name, they make you sign a list. They say, what is this for? He says very cleverly, well, you know about the TSA. And I went, whoa. He says, just kidding. That's behind a locked door. So it's quite an experience. And I think we should take a field trip. We should all go out to Oregon or Colorado or Washington State and buy pot.
Budget for that.
Free cash.
I have a hard time separating and truly believing that this is not some type of moral issue. I really do. As much as you say it isn't, I think it's in the gut. I think it's in the gut that it is, because if it truly were just a answering to the people, and if we're answering to the Chamber of Commerce because downtown doesn't want it, or if we're answering to the owners of businesses in the business park because they don't want it, then how come we're not answering to 55% of the voters in the city of Newburyport who voted in favor of legalizing marijuana? That's where I get hung up. We overwhelmingly voted for it, and we should be answering to that.
Okay, so now.
What else I got? That's probably about it. I just wanted to stand, last man standing, and put the words out there and say, I think we really, really, really can do a better job sometimes if we don't let ourselves get all involved in it and just do the job that's before us.
Further discussion?
Move the question.
Move the question.
I saw a hand first. Councilor Tantar.
I just want to know, I'm going to vote in favor of the moratorium, partly in deference to the councilors who sponsored and feel that they need it. But I also want to state that I've been contacted by people who are medical marijuana users and did not want their names to be used, and they said, look, we'd love to be able not to have to drive as far as we have to drive to get it. It's just serious. I mean, I know we're talking retail, but there are very few medical dispensaries, and I think that's something that we have to take and keep in mind as we go forward here. And I will. I'm willing to take this extra time. I will vote for the moratorium, but I hope we consider that element when we discuss this.
Councilor Z.
I just want to respond to the at-large councilor. I think it would be nice if we could work with neighborhoods and work with different places in the city that are being impacted by something. And what I'm frustrated by your comments is sort of like, well, we're listening to the people who live there and that's a problem. I'm a ward councilor, others are ward councilors. At-large are supposed to represent everybody in the city. It would just be nice if we could work together to ameliorate situations for neighborhoods that get directly impacted. And I get frustrated when I hear, like, let's split them up so the Ward 5 guy can just raise his hand and say no, as though it's just a symbolic vote. We're all supposed to work together. When we have different issues, when we have a drainage issue in Ward 6, we're all going to pay something towards it. When we had an odor issue in Ward 1 and 2, we all pay towards it. So it'd be nice to have that attitude rather than just saying, okay, well, who cares what the people who live near Story Ave think? They already have retail, so let's let them deal with it. I'm not saying we can't come to a compromise. Actually, I think you just saw an 11-0 vote on cultivation, which doesn't mean everybody's happy, but it represented some form of compromise. Could we get to 11-0 on retail? That's number one. And number two is, with all due respect, I'm going to challenge the at-large councilor. Bring in your proposal for retail. No one yet has been willing to say, let's put it downtown. Will you be the one to say, let's put it downtown? Put it in, and let's see what the response is. I mean, everybody's dancing around it, and I'm all for getting into it. I just don't think we have the capacity to do it in the next 6 weeks with the budget. But I want to hear those things, and I'm open to all avenues and all locations. But to date, and the ad hoc didn't want to put it downtown, and I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth, I think. But put your money where your mouth is. If you're ready, let's do it. Let's have the debate.
Councilor Hahn, then Councilor Vogel.
Well,
Do
thank
you
you,
yield?
Mr. President. I also wanted to respond when you said
Guess
it's a
they
moral
ignored me.
issue. And it really, to be honest, when I went back to try to figure out how did we end up with what we did for locations and try to see the ad hoc committee for marijuana, the rationale for those locations, I couldn't find that. So one of the things I was really hoping we could do is rejuvenate that, and it's probably my fault too. I know it was formed last year, so I didn't know when the meetings were. I think they were Friday mornings. But I hope when we do rejuvenate it, we could engage people and talk about all locations. I would love to see it downtown. Eat, shop, buy pot. I mean, why not? I mean, if we're going to try to entice people to our downtowns, why have them go along these, along the skirted outside of the city? It's like are we saying we don't really want them here and we're trying to avoid? Let's be honest. Let's be honest and have that conversation and really think about where we want it and where it makes sense.
Councillor Vogel, then
Thank you.
Councillor
Thank you very much. I truly respect that. And to the councillor from Ward 1, no disrespect to the neighbors. I think what we're talking about here, at least in my mind, is we're talking about retail stores. And there are retail zones in the community, plain and simple. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of choices. So when I say just put it there, well, I don't know where else we're going to just put it. We're limited to where we get to put it. So I don't mean to just diss the neighborhood, but that's where retail is. So how we have that conversation, I'm not sure. And as far as the moral issue piece of it, it's just deep in my gut, that's where it sort of resonates that that's what it is really. But if it isn't, then that's great. Portland, Oregon has the Pearl District, right downtown, Portland, Oregon, beautiful part of town, trolley runs through it. Good thing that there's a trolley because of course they've put marijuana use with traffic accidents now, so anyway, trolleys, hotels, places to eat, shop, eat, buy pot, I get it. I'll go with you and we'll talk about putting it downtown.
Councillor Ackerman.
I need to stick up for the process below. Okay, I understand it. First, I want to commend the councilor at large from Los Angeles County, who's the only one who pronounced Oregon correctly. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
But,
There's no we on it.
Yeah, right. But it's not 1968. It's not 1970. Honest to God, we looked at this totally as a zoning issue. Some retail is different than others. You may not agree, but we thought in working below and working with staff, there were aspects of retail marijuana, and some of us have personal experience. I lived in the Haight-Ashbury for many years, so I know a lot about it. There are special impacts, and we weren't ready. Okay, we didn't have good data. Frankly, the planning board didn't really help us. All they said was, you should just allow it. They didn't give us any suggestions, anything constructive. I'm sorry, they didn't. So it's on the council, as usual, to figure it out. But we played it straight, and I think the best evidence I can give you that the councilor of Ward 1 already told you. I mean, we just approved cultivation 11 zip. So if we were moralists, if we were Richard Nixon, it would not have passed 11-0. So please, cut us some slack.
Councillor Z.
Well, I just want to, one small point. It's not fair to argue on the one hand that marijuana sales, retail, or cultivation is so secure and therefore so different from other things, and then at the same time say that it's the same as all other retail, so what's the difference? Those two things are not congruent. It's either different or it's the same. That's not a moral question, that's a physical question. So on the one hand, the other colleague at large says, well, you should go visit one of these facilities, they're very different. Well, yeah, that's the whole point, is that they are different. So does a retail liquor shop have the same impact as a retail marijuana? I don't know the answer, but I think they run their operations different. Otherwise, we would be having more discussions on security and cash and all those things. So that frustrates me too. They seem like differing arguments. So you got to pick one. It's either the same or it's different.
Further discussion? Hearing none. But I'm going to offer an editorial comment before a roll call, and that is, I never thought I would sit and hear a city councilor in a public meeting say, I was 15 when I smoked my first joint. 9 words I never thought I'd hear strung together. This is a new world. Roll call vote, please.
This is a roll call to approve as amended in committee. Ordinance number 21. Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
No.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
No.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Council President.
Yes.
Needing 8, getting 9, motion passes.
Nothing further from our committee, Mr. President.
Thank you.
First reading.
Public safety.
Can I do that?
What are you going to find out?
Yeah, public safety.
Yes, motion to remove communication 39 from 5/14/2018.
Moved and seconded. Feline rescue struck for strays. Out of committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion to approve.
Moved and seconded to approve. Discussion. Councilor Devlin.
This is the 23rd annual feline strut for strays, and it makes me want to do this every time I see it. I was hoping that it was a cat fashion show, but it's not. It is begins and ends at the Spencer Pierce Little Farm, so it's Newbury's problem for the event itself. But they do walk down Ocean Ave, get on Water, Beacon, and then back out through the back way. I think Riley out to High Street again, or High Road actually. They get back into Newbury that way. So there's about 75 participants that walk. It's all covered by sidewalks. They've done it for 23, this is the 23rd year, never had any problems. They've got all their sign-offs. None of the concerns about having the event, noise, music, et cetera, because it's in Newbury. They have their insurance here. I had a wonderful conversation with Gail Lynch, and it came out 2-0 in favor of approval.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion to remove communication 40 from 5/14/2018.
Moved and seconded by Councilor to my left. I couldn't hear who it was. Councilor Earls. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Again, this came out with a recommendation 2-0. It's their 3rd annual that's gone through Newburyport. It starts in Portsmouth. They have a variety of different rides, length rides. The only one that comes into us is,
excuse me,
bless you, is the 100-mile ride, which is about 70 racers. By the time it reaches us, it looks like people riding their bikes on the side of the street. It's not a pack. They have a leader who's he does for a living is organize bike races. They have several support cars following these different groups, make sure everybody's okay. They do have a water stop at Hartnett and Sons in the industrial park, but it's on their private property. There's no music there. There's a water medical staff to make sure everybody's okay. They cover, I think, Parker to Graff to Low to Pond Street to High, and then back out again, and they're back into Newbury. So they're not here for very long either, and the festivities take place in Portsmouth, so it's Portsmouth's problem. And it came out with a recommendation 2-0.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else?
Motion to remove Order 25 from 4/30/2018.
Motion to remove.
What did I say? Remove.
Motion to reapprove.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
This is for a handicap space. I'm going to let Councilor Shan discuss it. I think it's a Sun, right, and they're doing construction there.
Got it. So this is for the house that is next to the house on Merrill Street that has recently been torn down. They have a handicapped son that is picked up in the morning and dropped off in the afternoon by an Opportunity Works van. They've been dealing with the construction of the house and actually the deconstruction of the house, and they were requesting a space to accommodate the van during pickup and drop-off time. So This would only be from Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, and it would extend through March of 2019, since we're just dealing with construction of the house on Merrill Street, so.
Doesn't say that.
Just briefly, you
Came out 2-0.
you just said 2019, the order
Yes.
says 2020.
Yes,
Which is.
and we amended.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I believe the check.
I'm confused.
As amended.
As amended. Councilor Devlin?
Yes, I think we're going to have to move to amend. Well, it came out as amended, okay.
It came out as amended?
And the amendment was to have that one space to go to March 30th, 2019, and it's only Monday through Friday, 8 to 4.
Correct.
Okay, and that was the action of the committee?
Yes, that's what came out,
Okay.
2-0.
So we know it's before us. Further
Yes.
discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Motion to remove order number 26 from 4/30/2018.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
This is for a
Is
handicap.
there a motion?
No, say motion to remove. I mean, to approve.
To approve. Seconded by Councilor? Second. Seconded. You're up.
This is a handicap space on 29 Ting. It was submitted by Ward 4 Councilor Charles Tontar. It is there is a temporary one-year spot there now because the husband that lives there, the male that lives there, had a surgery. He's elderly and they needed it for the year. They have since said that he's still incapacitated and requires it and probably will for the rest of his life. So it's looking to be, it's a 10-year space, and it came out of committee 2-0 for approval.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Anything else?
That's it.
Public utilities.
Nothing tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you. Rules Committee.
Nothing.
Good of the order.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.